Chapter 1398. After defeating the Juggernaut in front of him, Lin Jun knew that a real difficulty had arrived. The Death Juggernaut. Lin Jun had long known this person. Among the 9 special Juggernauts, he might not be the strongest few, but he was definitely the most famous. Moreover, he did not have a good reputation. He belonged to the infamous type. The other Juggernauts reached a high position because they were all extraordinarily talented, worked hard, and experienced countless difficulties and dangers to reach their current accomplishments. But the Death Juggernaut was different. He entered the Tao through slaughter, bringing only pain and death to people. Virtually none of his opponents could leave an intact corpse. Whether they deserved to be killed or not, as long as he was in a bad mood and did not see eye to eye, he would immediately make a move. And he would show no mercy. Using the word inhumane to describe him was absolutely not an exaggeration. It was also precisely because he did as he pleased that he could achieve the position of a special Juggernaut. It could be said that this person was the coldest and most ruthless person in the entire universe. No matter which martial artist faced him, they could only tremble in fear. The Death Juggernaut appeared, bringing a gust of cold wind. Wherever he passed, vegetation withered and the sand turned black. It was not that he had poison on him, but his baleful aura. The more he killed, the heavier his baleful aura. Heavy baleful aura could affect all things. Any martial artist's growth came from mountains of corpses and seas of blood. But to have baleful aura so heavy to the Death Juggernaut's level was truly unprecedented. Kiki, as expected of a peerless genius. But in my life, I like to end the path of geniuses. The wails of people like you, when your ambitions are not fulfilled, are my favorite sounds. Is that so? Then today's outcome might fall on you. Lin Jun was also happy to chat with him a little more. Delaying for a second was good, but it was clear that the Death Juggernaut would not let Lin Jun have his way. He rolled his eyes. Kid, don't waste your time. Today is your last day. The Death Juggernaut raised his hand. A death god's scythe appeared in his hand. A supreme grade weapon. This was the Death Juggernaut's trademark. I see that you've been fighting for so long and still haven't taken out a weapon. Could it be that you don't have a suitable weapon at all? If that's the case, I won't be polite. The Death Dominus let out a sinister laugh. The Grim Reaper's scythe swept up a black saber light as it whistled toward Lin Jun. The baleful aura on this saber could be described as shocking. Before the saber even touched the body, the cold, baleful aura had already seeped into the marrow. Even a normal quasi-ruler would probably be frozen to death. Lin Jun knew that he couldn't do anything when the saber came over. The Death's sovereign strength was even above sky flowers. In truth, Lin Jun had only taken advantage of the fact that Tianhua didn't dare to use his full strength to win by a fluke. But the Sovereign of Death was different. Perhaps this special Sovereign of Death had killed so many people that he was indifferent to his own life and death. When he attacked, he became one with his saber, incomparably valiant. If Lin Jun had a weapon in his hand, it would be fine, but he was now barehanded. Dealing with the opponent's top-grade equipment was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The Sovereign of Death attacked, also using a sovereign combat skill. Cold and gloomy saber light surged forth in waves, wave after wave. Lin Jun didn't even have the ability to fight back. Pooh, pooh, pooh. In the blink of an eye, Lin Jun had been hit hundreds of times. Wounds, blood, and cold, baleful aura attacked at the same time. If not for the fact that Lin Jun already had the heavenly baleful death aura, he would have already died. Even so, if this continued, dying was only a matter of time. Weapon. I need a weapon. Pooh, pooh, pooh. His shoulder was swept by the opponent's scythe, and one of his arms was almost severed. Lin Jun's lotus flower suddenly bloomed, blocking this fatal blow. Kiki, you have some skills. You even have a flower that can block my death god's consecutive slashes. But let's see how many times you can block. The Sovereign of Death continued to attack. He had the absolute upper hand, and victory was only a matter of time. Master, the range of data has been further reduced. There are less than 100 people in the entire universe who have the protection of a lotus flower. Also, when combined with other data, there are only two people who are close. Who are they? The Radiant Sovereign asked the holy angel beside him. One of them is Lin Jun, and the other is a nobody. He only lived for 100 years before he died. However, this person seems to have some connections with the Lin family. Don't keep me in suspense. Just say it. Yes, this person is called Lin Fan. 800 years ago, he was born on a native planet in the New Territories. When he was born, he had the strange phenomenon of a lotus flower protecting his body. During his time in the New Territories, he did many things, including wiping out the Lin family's influence in the New Territories. He caused the Lin family's rule in the New Territories to collapse. The holy angel quickly recounted Lin Fan's deeds in the New Territories. There was one that caught the Radiant Sovereign's attention. This Lin Fan had actually used the Finger's sovereign battle skill, and this nameless warrior had also used the Finger's sovereign battle skill. These two battle skills were exactly the same, cut from the same cloth. The Radiant Sovereign naturally didn't believe this to be a coincidence. There were virtually no identical sovereign battle skills in the world. If this person was Lin Fan, then this nameless warrior had many of the same characteristics as Lin Jun. If this person was Lin Jun, then there was no way to explain this sovereign battle skill. The Radiant Sovereign began to connect the dots in his mind. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. The Radiant Sovereign had grasped a crucial point. Are you saying that Lin Fan was born 800 years ago? Yes, Master. I have the exact date as well. The date is XXXX year, XX month. The Radiant Sovereign's eyes narrowed slightly. Have you forgotten about this date? The holy angel was startled. She couldn't recall anything. Idiot, do you still remember the date Lin Jun died? The holy angel nodded. I remember, but it wasn't this date. It was 10 months off. That's right. When humans give birth, they have to go through 10 months of pregnancy. Don't you think that this nameless warrior, Lin Jun, and Lin Fan have some sort of strange connection? Soon, the holy angel's eyes lit up. Master, you mean? It's very simple. Whether it's Lin Jun, Lin Fan, or this nameless warrior, it's very likely that they're the same person. In other words, Lin Jun didn't die at all. This nameless warrior is his reincarnation. No way. Lin Jun was killed by all of us working together. How could he have a chance to reincarnate? The Radiant Sovereign's expression became increasingly certain. Nothing is impossible. Lin Jun must have some sort of heaven-defying technique. Otherwise, he couldn't have triggered the supreme mission of the universe's prime essences. I'm already 80% sure that it's him. Only he has a chance of comprehending a sovereign battle skill. Master, then what do we do? Tell the others about this? Chapter 1399. Lin Jun didn't know that the Radiant Sovereign had already guessed his identity. He also wouldn't be able to deal with the Death Sovereign as easily as the Radiant Sovereign thought. Without a weapon, Lin Jun wouldn't be able to defeat the Radiant Sovereign even if he used a Sovereign's battle skill. However, his weapons had all been destroyed by the combined attacks of the 41 Sovereigns before they could be reborn. Lin Jun didn't have any weapons at all. Even if he did, they wouldn't be able to contend against the Death Sovereign's scythe. My reincarnated Green Lotus, just how many secrets do you have? Why can't you give me some real support? Just as Lin Jun was in extreme danger, he sensed a slight change in the Green Lotus. Within the Chaos Green Lotus Seed within the Neoverse, there were a total of 3 balls of light being nurtured. The middle ball was naturally the Sovereign's godly crystal that Lin Jun yearned for day and night. It was a treasure from the Neoverse. Above and below the Sovereign's godly crystal were 2 balls of light. The upper ball of light was a power separated from the lotus leaves and lotus flowers. It was unknown what it was nurturing. The lower ball of light was the lotus stem. After 8 lifetimes of nurturing, it had finally matured. Just as Lin Jun felt that he was isolated and helpless and was about to use his trump card to fight the Death Dominus to the death, this thing appeared. A brilliant divine light suddenly broke out of the cocoon in the Neoverse and soared into the sky. This green light actually forced back the Death Sovereign's cold, baleful aura, as if it had met its natural nemesis. It collapsed. Seeing Lin Jun surrounded by the green pillar of light, the Death Sovereign's expression changed greatly. Such a powerful life force. What is this thing? The surrounding sovereigns also had ugly expressions. This seemed to be a weapon, and one that surpassed their understanding. Only a few special sovereigns and exalted sovereigns said the same thing in unison. Supreme equipment. Only the appearance of a supreme armament could cause such a commotion. But why would a supreme armament appear on this nameless martial artist? It must be known that the reward for completing a supreme mission was only a supreme equipment. Who was this nameless warrior? What secrets did he have? Looking at Lin Jun's body, a green light connected the sky and the earth. It flickered a few times before finally turning into a tiny green light and falling into Lin Jun's hand. It was a long spear. The spear shaft was cyan in color and was over 7 meters long. It was straight and firm, neither gold nor jade. It was unknown what it was made of. At the end of the spear, there was a little white tail. It looked a little like a lotus root, but it was very regular and ingenious. The tip of the spear was in the shape of a budding lotus flower. It was extremely sharp, and a circle of lotus leaves formed the spear's rotation. Lin Jun held the gun in his hand, his heart filled with pride. This was his weapon, the primal chaos lotus spear. From the tip of the lotus to the end of the lotus root, with the stem as the main body, chaos energy filled the interior, forming this lotus divine spear. This wasn't a sovereign's armament. Ordinary sovereigns weren't qualified to use this spear. This was a divine spear formed from the power of the universe when the primal chaos was about to open. This was a supreme weapon. In order to kill Lin Jun, the only price the universe's origin had to pay was a supreme weapon. And now, Lin Jun had one in his hand. Holding the primal chaos lotus spear, an unprecedented feeling of power rose in his heart. With Lin Jun's current strength, he didn't even fear a special sovereign when using this spear. Ha ha! Ha ha! Lin Jun looked up to the sky and laughed. His joy was indescribable. This primal chaos lotus was indeed a priceless treasure. Not only did it help him reincarnate, but it also gave birth to a supreme weapon. With this spear, Lin Jun was confident that as long as these people didn't swarm him, he could survive this test of survival. The Death Sovereign looked at the spear in Lin Jun's hand, and a trace of fanaticism appeared in her eyes. Kid, where did you get this weapon? You'll just invite trouble if you keep it. Give it to me for safekeeping. If he could snatch this weapon and then kill his opponent, the Sovereign of Death would instantly possess 2 pieces of supreme equipment. Wouldn't that make him the #1 Sovereign of Death? Sovereigns were rarely blinded by greed. That was because there was nothing worth their crazy sacrifice. But seeing the spear in Lin Jun's hand, the Death Sovereign could no longer remain calm. With a howl, she waved the death scythe in her hand and charged at Lin Jun. Lin Jun's eyes flashed. Under the delusion breaker eye, the Death Sovereign's feints were no longer a threat. He had a way to break the other party's attack. Your glory has come to an end. Lin Jun shook the primal chaos lotus spear with both hands and faced the attack. Dimensional combined attack. Lin Jun finally had a perfect opportunity to use the sovereign battle skill that he hadn't used all this time. Originally, his cultivation of this battle skill wasn't stable enough. But when he obtained the primal chaos lotus spear, those difficult parts were suddenly enlightened. This was the benefit of the change in his state of mind. He couldn't help but feel happy. The power of the new universe and the old universe clashed. The 2 powers overlapped and space intertwined. In an instant, the stars in the universe moved and the weather changed. An unbelievably powerful force was concentrated on Lin Jun's spear. The primal chaos lotus spear and the Death Sovereign's death scythe clashed fiercely. There was no stalemate. It was one-sided. The vast spear light was like a moving galaxy. It was unstoppable. The Death Sovereign's blade, which was filled with a sinister aura, couldn't stop Lin Jun's spear light at all and instantly collapsed. In the blink of an eye, the spear had already reached the Death Sovereign's body. The Death Sovereign tried his best to block, but couldn't. The spear fell. There was no blood. Only broken bones and flesh filled the sky. The Death Sovereign's divine body's energy was instantly reduced to zero. His divine body shattered, and only the divine infant escaped. The divine infant was alive, but that didn't mean he was truly dead. The Sovereign's divine crystal wrapped around a lump of flesh and wanted to escape with the divine infant. As long as he could protect the divine infant and the Sovereign's divine crystal, he still had a chance to live. But at this point, how could Lin Jun let the Death Sovereign escape? He was already enemies with the world. Why should he care about the enemy's life and death? Ha ha! You want to leave? Only the Eternal Mountain is the only place for your divine crystal. The primal chaos lotus spear in his hand shook, and a space-time rift tens of millions of kilometers long appeared in the path of the Death Sovereign's divine infant. On the other side of the rift was a terrifying dimensional space, where endless space-time turbulence was. Normally, the Death Sovereign wouldn't be afraid of space-time turbulence. But now that he was in his divine infant state, how could he resist it? With a scream, the divine infant escaped into the space-time turbulence. Before the space-time rift closed, everyone could clearly see his divine infant collapse and dissipate. A special sovereign had fallen just like that. Chapter 1400. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, because the sovereigns had agreed not to interfere in other people's battles. Lin Jun had killed the Death Sovereign, and no one had been able to stop him. In the blink of an eye, a powerful special sovereign had fallen. At this moment, everyone's hearts were filled with sorrow. They were all sovereigns, and their countless years of bitter cultivation had all been for naught. They could only watch helplessly as the Death Sovereign fell. But what they cared about even more was the strength Lin Jun had displayed. In fact, Lin Jun's strength was not stronger than the Death Dominus, but the power of the ultimate armament was not to be underestimated. It was like two people of similar strength fighting each other with a knife, but one of them suddenly opened fire. Add to that the fact that Lin Jun had unleashed a sovereign battle skill, and the Death Sovereign had been caught off guard. She had suffered a great loss and lost her life. A ferocious figure had died, without leaving behind even a speck of dust. The Death Sovereign's death was a blow to the lofty sovereigns. This nameless warrior in front of them wasn't some soft persimmon they could casually crush. His powerful paramount armament, as well as his unprecedented dimensional combo battle skill, caused the sovereigns to break out in cold sweat. As expected, paramount missions weren't that fun. A single misstep, and they would follow in the Death Sovereign's footsteps. After the Death Sovereign, the sovereigns who came out after fell silent for a while, then chose to give up. Right now, Lin Jun's morale was at its peak. Without absolute confidence, it was unwise to fight him head-on. If they wanted to fight against the current Lin Jun, ordinary sovereigns probably weren't strong enough. Only special sovereigns and exalted sovereigns could. But one exalted sovereign after another chose to give up. With the special sovereigns dead, ordinary people didn't dare to show off. When it was the Overlord's turn, everyone turned to look at him. The Overlord could be said to be the strongest person here. Even a Freedom Sovereign and Soul Lock didn't dare say they were stronger than the Overlord. Many people even believed that the next sovereign to reach the Great Circle would be the Overlord. Seeing everyone's gazes, the Overlord laughed loudly. I know what you're planning. You want me and this nameless warrior to both be seriously injured, right? But I won't let you get your way. The Freedom Sovereign said, could it be that you don't have any confidence in defeating this nameless warrior? The tyrant thought for a moment. Previously, I had 100% confidence in defeating him. But after witnessing his dimensional battle technique, I only had 70% confidence. But now that he has the ultimate equipment in his hands, it's less than 50%. I won't take part in such a battle. I believe you guys are the same. Sacrificing yourself for the sake of others? Although Tyrant's words were not polite, the others agreed. Not only the Overlord, but the others also made the same choice. The Overlord looked at the other sovereigns around him and said, I believe that since I've already given up, you guys don't have any other choice, right? Why don't we all take action together? Even if we can't complete the Supreme mission, at the very least, this brat has a supreme weapon in his hands. He Jim and Freedom and He Jim and Soul Lock exchanged a glance. They both felt that this method was feasible. Just as the dust was about to settle, the chief sovereign of light stepped forward. Everyone, I still want to try. The others didn't say anything. They felt that the radiant He Jimin was a bit stubborn. He clearly knew that he couldn't do anything, yet he still insisted on doing it. Since he wanted to make a fool of himself, then so be it. The Overlord and the others all retreated, watching as the Radiant Sovereign appeared. The Radiant Sovereign slowly walked over to Lin Jin's side, then clapped his hands. Clap, clap, clap. Good. What a nameless warrior. You actually have a supreme equipment, and you've learned 2 sovereign battle techniques. Your divine power is over 100 million units, but you haven't even become a sovereign yet. This is unheard of. Lin Jun remembered this radiant sovereign. When he had been surrounded, it had been this person who had mobilized many sovereigns to attack him. Otherwise, Lin Jun wouldn't have had to go through 9 reincarnations. He might have become a sovereign long ago. Although after Nirvana, Lin Jun would walk an even stronger path, Lin Jun wouldn't thank him. He was an enemy. If you don't have anything to say, then don't talk. If you want to fight, then come. Seeing that the sovereigns weren't attacking, Lin Jun began to grow anxious. Although he had a supreme equipment, there was no way he could fight a group of sovereigns. If the Radiant Sovereign attacked, he could buy some time. Haha, what's the rush? I have a belly full of things to say to you. The Radiant Sovereign smiled, then suddenly said, Should I call you Lin Fan? Or Lin Jun? Lin Jun's face flickered. This was what he had been most worried about. When fighting a sovereign, it was impossible not to use a battle technique. If he did, it would arouse suspicion. Thus, he had first used the primal chaos tribulation finger to confuse others. But Lin Jun hadn't expected the Radiant Sovereign to learn the truth so quickly. However, the Radiant Sovereign didn't say this to anyone else. Only he and Lin Jun could hear, which was why it didn't cause a stir. You know, quite a bit. Lin Jun didn't deny it. There was no point in denying it. The Radiant Sovereign had already made up his mind. Of course, you should know that once you do something, you'll be exposed. You've already been exposed. Are you going to surrender? Or are you going to wait for me to make my move? Lin Jun waved his primal chaos lotus spear. You might not know how to spell the word death. Haha, you have an overlord equipment. Even I might not be a match for you. But since I dared to come here, do you think I wouldn't have made preparations? The Radiant Sovereign waved his hand, and 10,000 rays of light filled the air, forming a forbidden region of light. The light was so strong that no one outside could see in. Within the light, only Lin Jun and himself could be seen. The Radiant Sovereign waved his hand once more, and a water mirror appeared. The scene within the water mirror caused Lin Jun to suck in a cold breath of air, because the scene within the mirror was actually that of the Starfall Lake. The battle at the Starfall Lake had been going on for centuries. Both sides were exhausted. During these centuries, Lin Jun had forced himself not to pay attention to the situation at the Starfall Lake. But now, he could see that the former star-seizing island had been razed to the ground. The surrounding area was filled with invading enemies. Only the very center of Star-Seizing Island hadn't been destroyed. Amidst the sea of people on the battlefield, Linley could vaguely make out several slender, beautiful figures. These were his wives. After centuries, they were still alive. Lin Jun took a deep breath, then looked at the Radiant Sovereign. Why are you showing me this? It's very simple. Lin Jun, have you ever considered that if a hegemon were to appear on this battlefield, would your family still be safe? As he spoke, another small image appeared within the water mirror. This was the image of the second holy angel hurrying towards the Starfall Lake. Lin Jun's heart clenched. Although his wives were quite strong, how could they possibly resist a hegemon? Chapter 1401. Looking at the ruler of light's face, Lin Jun replied, Don't try to scare me. Even a ruler would have to traverse the endless sea of stars to reach the primordial realm's fallen star lake from the wild continent. It would take at least 100 years. Your threat is useless. The ruler of light laughed. I knew you would say that, but let me ask you to take a closer look. Is there anything different beneath the divine angel's feet? Lin Jin took a closer look and indeed found something different. There was a thin thread beneath the divine angel's feet. It glowed with a faint black light as it traversed through space. Stepping on the silk thread, their speed soared to the limit. It wasn't the speed of light, but a speed that far exceeded it. This thread traversed the boundaries of space-time. It could actually ignore the distance between them and help them advance rapidly. Haha, you'd best open your eyes and see. Isn't the Skyfire continent in front of you? Lin Jun looked again. Indeed, there was a red nebula in the water mirror. It was a characteristic of the Skyfire continent. However, the scene flashed by. Soon, the two rulers passed through the Skyfire continent and the Skyfire galaxy. A distance of billions of light years was traversed in a matter of seconds. At this rate, they would soon reach the primordial realm's Fallen Star Lake. Lin Jun was astonished. For some reason, he felt that this thread was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't recall where. Lin Jun, the choice is yours. As long as you nod, the divine angel will embark on the return journey. Although I can't guarantee what the other rulers will do to you, I can guarantee that no one will ever threaten your family again. I can even swear on my life. The ruler of light's expression was solemn. Clearly, he was speaking the truth. As long as he could deal with Lin Jun, the Lin family didn't matter to him at all. It didn't matter if they lived or died. He understood Lin Jun's history. Family was very important to Lin Jun. Now that his family was in mortal danger, he definitely wouldn't abandon them. This was why he dared to negotiate with Lin Jun. He believed that he had found Lin Jun's weakness. He looked into Lin Jun's eyes and waited for Lin Jun's reply. Lin Jun stared straight at the chief sovereign of light. Ever since I started cultivating, I've never planned to give up on my family. However, there are always people who keep using my family to threaten me. I really hate it. There's no point in hating him. You still have to make this choice. The chief sovereign of light was very confident. As time passed, I even felt that my family was sometimes a burden to me, hindering me from moving forward. Lin Jun slowly raised the lotus flower spear in his hand. What you have left me now is an incomparably difficult choice. If I put down my spear, you might turn around and leave, but I'll still be surrounded and attacked by the other sovereigns. When that happens, death will still be unavoidable. As for my family, when that happens, will they still be able to survive? The radiant hegemon suddenly had a bad premonition. If Lin Jun didn't care about his family, then the radiant hegemon would have miscalculated. Lin Jun, you better think carefully. Where are your wife, children, and parents? They're all you have. If you give them up, you'll never have them again. He threatened sternly. Lin Jun weighed the spear in his hand. Hee. What else can I do if I don't give them up? After I die, it's only a matter of time before Fallen Star Lake falls. I can't care about that. Actually, your choice is easy. If I give up, I'll lose everything. If I don't give up, I'll still have a chance. What do you think I'll choose? Chief Sovereign of Light, you seem smart, but you're actually very stupid. Do you think I'm some brainless saint who would sacrifice myself to save others, only to be killed in one fell swoop? The moment you gave me this choice, you're insulting my intelligence. Die. Lin Jun struck at lightning speed. His spear tore through space. Dimensional Combined Strike appeared once more. This chief sovereign of light had schemed against him time and time again. He couldn't be allowed to live. Even if he couldn't survive his 8th life's survival mission today, he had to get rid of this person. The chief sovereign of light hadn't expected that Lin Jun would be so decisive. He didn't even care about the lives of his family members. It seemed that his original judgment had been wrong. Lin Jun wasn't the sort of person who valued his family above all else. He was an incomparably rational person who was calm to the extreme. If he handed over his weapon, he wouldn't be able to live. His family wouldn't be able to live either. If he took up his weapon and fought, he would at least have a chance to live. The choice was that simple. Many people would always make the wrong choice, but Lin Jun wasn't one of them. The chief sovereign of light didn't know that Lin Jun had already forgotten his past during his first life of nirvanic rebirth. The matters of his previous life had already passed in his heart. At the very least, his rationality and calmness would never allow him to make stupid mistakes. A single miscalculation had caused him to face Lin Jun's fatal attack. Just now, the chief sovereign of death had died to Lin Jun's attack. Lin Jun was very confident that the chief sovereign of light wouldn't be able to withstand this attack and would definitely be defeated. However, he didn't expect the situation to change again. The chief sovereign of light waved his hand, and a long wooden staff appeared in his hand. He struck with the staff, and it was as if a huge golden sun had risen in front of him. It took Lin Jun's dimensional combined attack head-on. Sun Will Seal. Lin Jun knew this move. It was the 8th move of the 9-stack seals technique. Lin Jun had only learned the 7th move of the Seal of Aquarius, which was inferior to the Chief Sovereign of Light's technique. Moreover, the Chief Sovereign of Light had activated his sovereign domain and used his godly power to suppress Lin Jun. However, this wasn't enough to stop his supreme equipment. What truly shocked Lin Jun was that the wooden staff had blocked the Lotus Flower Spear's attack without being damaged. This was also a supreme equipment. Before Lin Jun's current supreme mission, there had been 2 other supreme missions, and 2 pieces of equipment had appeared. He didn't expect one of them to be in the Chief Sovereign of Light's hands. No, this equipment isn't complete. Lin Jun had a vague feeling that the other party's wooden staff wasn't the best form of the equipment. However, he didn't care about that now. The Chief Sovereign of Light had a supreme equipment and activated his god's domain. He could already suppress Lin Jun. After all, the last 3 moves of the stack battle technique belonged to the Chief Sovereign battle technique. The Chief Sovereign of Light was proficient in the 8th move, which made him stronger than Lin Jun. The Chief Sovereign of Light, who had failed to intimidate him, finally bared his fangs. This scene stunned all the other sovereigns behind him. This was because no one knew who had completed the previous 2 supreme missions. The Chief Sovereign of Light also said that he wasn't the one who had completed them. However, where had his supreme equipment come from? This guy actually had a supreme equipment and was proficient in stack battle techniques. It was said that special sovereigns were the strongest, but from the looks of it, this guy was the one who had hidden the deepest secrets. Chapter 1402. Lin Jun and the Chief Sovereign of Light's battle continued for 8 full hours. They were evenly matched, tit for tat. The 2 of them fought with all their might, and the powerful shock waves from their battle made it impossible for anyone else to get close. They had weapons of the same grade, divine power of similar quality, and both had Chief Sovereign's battle skills. The 2 of them were evenly matched. The only thing Lin Jun lacked was a domain. Without a Chief Sovereign's domain, he was constantly being suppressed. If their domains were at the same level, Lin Jun was confident in his ability to win. However, Lin Jun relied on his unyielding will and spirit to forcibly endure the Chief Sovereign of Light's relentless attacks. After 8 hours, he had suffered countless injuries, but he hadn't been defeated. During this time, the Chief Sovereign of Light attempted to release a water mirror, allowing Lin Jun to see what was happening at Starfall Lake and interfere with his battle. However, Lin Jun didn't give the Chief Sovereign of Light the chance to do so. He didn't have the energy to care about what was happening at Starfall Lake. Looking at it would only distract him. As soon as the water mirror appeared, he would immediately shatter it without even looking. The Chief Sovereign of Light was at his wit's end. Lin Jun was like a rock in a latrine, hard and smelly. No matter what he did, it was useless. In another 10 minutes, the day would be over. The spectators could no longer bear to watch any longer. It seemed as though the Chief Sovereign of Light would win at any moment, but he still couldn't win the battle. They weren't willing to let this drag on until the end of the mission. "I've had enough," the Overlord roared. "The time is almost up, yet you're still dawdling around. Let's all attack together. Whoever kills him will be the one to complete the mission. Let's see who gets the job done." "Fine, let's do that." The Chief Sovereign of Freedom, Soul Lock, and the others couldn't bear it any longer. The Overlord's suggestion was exactly what they wanted. No one paid any more attention to the Chief Sovereign of Light. The remaining 46 Chief Sovereigns began to attack from all directions. This time, it was different from the battle at Mirage Village. That time, 40-plus Chief Sovereigns had joined forces to attack, and there had been no way to stop them. This time, however, each of them was attacking individually. This was for the sake of ensuring that the mission would be completed. Otherwise, if they joined forces, there was no way to determine who would complete the mission. The surrounding area was densely packed with people, and all kinds of attacks were whistling through the air. The pressure on Lin Jun's shoulders suddenly increased. Lin Jun also knew that the final moment of this life survival mission had finally arrived. Although it was dangerous, he did not panic. Lin Jun raised the lotus flower spear in his hand and activated an unstoppable martial technique. Advance! In front of him was a fire-type sovereign who was currently using his most prized trump card, a ball of dark blue flames. Ice! Lin Jun blocked the other party's flames with a stream of cold air. Man and spear is one. Time acceleration. 24 times the normal speed allowed Lin Jun to exceed the speed of light. The paragon was caught off guard and was pierced through the chest by Lin Jun's spear. His body flashed past, and he turned around and killed the nascent soul that had left its body. He struck Lin Jun 3 or 4 times in a row. Lin Jun spat out blood and retreated, but his powerful regenerative abilities allowed him to continue fighting. A sparkling sovereign god, crystal disappeared into the universe. Lin Jun only had some success with his first strike. Afterwards, when everyone rushed forward, he didn't have such a good opportunity to kill them. He could only use his immovable mountain martial intent to defend himself. But with enemies all around him, immovable mountain wasn't as effective. He could only rely on the occasional time acceleration to break out of the encirclement. During this time, he would definitely suffer a heavy blow. The chaos blue lotus constantly bloomed around him. The supreme armament in his hand struck out with immovable mountain's defense. Like this, Lin Jun dashed left and right through the crowd, doing his best to hold on. Blood stained his robes. Over 40 sovereigns were still unable to thoroughly kill Lin Jun. His formidable strength shook the universe. Everyone could see that if Lin Jun continued like this, he wouldn't be able to last much longer. Defeat was only a matter of time. However, his will to fight, spirit, and strength were enough to move people. The universe had been ruled by sovereigns for a long time. Today, Lin Jun could be considered a person who dared to defy the heavens. But such a person often didn't have a good ending. In the end, they would be smashed to pieces. Everyone could only look at the battlefield in awe. Their emotions were complicated. Puff, puff, puff. Bam, bam. Continuous attacks landed on Lin Jun, slowing down his movements. No matter how strong his body was, he couldn't withstand the combined attacks of so many sovereigns. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to hold on. He used his psychic power to scan the dimensional universe's countdown. There were less than 2 minutes left. I can't hold on any longer. I'll go all out. A sovereign charged at Lin Jun head-on. This person dealt the greatest blow to Lin Jun. This person was Tianhua. Although he'd lost to Lin Jun, he was still indignant. Now that everyone was ganging up on him, he made a comeback. He hoped that with his metal elemental venerate's powerful attacks, he could avenge his previous humiliation and complete the supreme mission. Lin Jun's eyes darkened. The heaven fiend destruction lightning that he'd prepared beforehand whistled out. Light of destruction. These 3 bolts of lightning were Lin Jun's trump cards. He wouldn't use them easily. With his current strength, even a sovereign wouldn't have it easy if he were hit by the lightning bolts head-on. Tianhua was eager to prove himself. He charged 2 ferociously and happened to be within the range of Lin Jun's lightning bolts. Boom! In a brilliant flash of lightning, Tianhua's body was blasted into pieces. The nascent soul escaped, but it was surrounded by black death chi. That was Lin Jun's unique heaven fiend death chi. Anyone who came in contact with it would die. Tianhua's heaven fiend death chi had nowhere to run. Oh, I can't accept this. The nascent soul screamed. Its body crumbled in the void. Another sovereign god crystal rose into the air and left. In order to deal a blow to Tianhua, Lin Jun took several heavy blows. One of them was the Overlord Sovereign's lightning spear. The Overlord Sovereign's long hair danced in the wind. His spear was like a dragon. With his powerful strength, he fought Lin Jun head-on. Lin Jun's counterattacks were to no avail. Instead, he took several blows. After killing Tianhua with a single blow, Lin Jun decided to go all the way. He fired a destruction atom at the Overlord Sovereign. The Heaven Fiend destruction atom was the most powerful of the 3 lightning bolts. Lin Jun pounced and purposely exposed an opening. He allowed the Overlord Sovereign's spear to pierce through him. Then, he pounced on the Overlord Sovereign and spat out lightning bolts. "I'll take your life with a heavy injury." The thunderous roar reverberated through the universe. A bolt of lightning fell. The Overlord Sovereign was struck by the destruction atom lightning, which was both fast and powerful. His body was pulverized. The nascent soul's fate was the same as that of the Metal Sovereign, Tianhua. It was bound by the Heaven Fiend Death Chi and had nowhere to run. It died on the spot. Lin Jun ended the Overlord Sovereign's life with his own hands. This was someone whose combat skills he had once learned from. After killing the Overlord Sovereign, Lin Jun had already used 2 of his 3 Heaven Fiend lightning bolts. However, he still had many experts by his side, including the Light Sovereign, Freedom Sovereign, and Soullock Sovereign. Although he only had 1 destruction atom lightning bolt in his hand, and he was so heavily injured that he could hardly continue fighting, Lin Jun still laughed maniacally. "Awesome. If you want to take my life, then you'll have to be prepared to be killed by me. Today, the Universe Sovereign's factions will be reshuffled." He was no longer concerned about life and death. His heroism soared to the heavens. Chapter 1403. No one could have imagined that this nameless warrior would actually counterattack at the last moment and kill 3 sovereigns in a row. One was an ordinary sovereign, one was an exalted sovereign, and one was a special sovereign. Some people would even believe that this was one of the top 3 in the universe. This was because the Overlord Sovereign was one of the top 5 existences in the universe. Yet he had been deceived by Lin Jun's trick. He had been seriously injured, lost his ability to fight, and then killed by a single lightning bolt. This sort of scheming was unparalleled in the world. Moreover, he had unleashed 2 such deadly bolts of lightning in a row. Everyone was worried that he might have more. If he did, no one wanted to be the first one to stick their neck out. The Sovereign's attacks seemed to be slowing down, and there were less than 30 seconds left before the mission was complete. The Radiant Sovereign immediately roared when he saw this. "Everyone, don't be fooled by this brat. Let me tell you, he is Lin Jun." This roar caused everyone to be stunned. What? This was Lin Jun? Someone looked at the Radiant Sovereign. Is this true? Didn't Lin Jun die? He died? Yes, but he was reincarnated. This time, he did something that angered the universe's prime essences, which is why they issued a supreme mission. The Radiant Sovereign spoke very quickly, because there wasn't much time left. There's no need to doubt his identity. I dare swear on my life that he is Lin Jun. He has 3 bolts of lightning in total, and he has already used 2. He hasn't used the last one yet. Everyone continue to attack. Even if one of you dies, someone else will definitely complete the mission. The chances of dying are only 1 in 40. What are you worried about? Is the supreme mission not worth risking your life for? Everyone was tempted once more. Since the Radiant Sovereign dared to swear, then Lin Jun's identity was probably real. No wonder this person looked so similar to Lin Jun, and their methods were similar. It turned out that he was Lin Jun's reincarnation. Then he had to be eliminated. Otherwise, once he became a sovereign, he would probably come back to settle accounts with those people from the past. Although it was possible that someone else would be killed, that person might not be them. This risk was still worth taking. These sovereigns were all smart people. After making up their minds, they looked at each other, then charged forward together. Attacks filled the sky once more. Moreover, these attacks were almost at the same frequency. This way, Lin Jun wouldn't know who to attack, and everyone would have a chance to complete the quest. It was an all-around attack with no blind spots. Everyone's domains intertwined, filling up the space. Lin Jun had no chance to teleport away. The strategy could be said to be flawless. In fact, even if their tactics weren't so perfect, Lin Jun wouldn't have the ability to fight back after being continuously attacked. No matter how strong his body was, or how powerful his supreme equipment was, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long under the attacks of so many sovereigns. Lin Jun, in particular, had been severely injured when he had killed the Overlord. He had been on the brink of death, not to mention a group of people beating him up. Even if it was just one person beating him up, it would be hard enough for him. Facing the attacks that filled the sky and looking at the countdown timer that had less than 10 seconds left, Lin Jin smiled. This is the second time you've ganged up on me. I've memorized every single one of you. I'll take revenge in my next life. As he spoke, Lin Jin's body suddenly began to rapidly expand. Time had been accelerated by 24 times. Self-destruction. With his over 100 million points of godly power, anyone who got close to him wouldn't have a good ending. However, his speed after accelerating was faster than everyone else's. It was too late to dodge. The black, innate, ferocious aura of death was like a black bomb. It exploded along with Lin Jun's self-destruction. Heaven and earth shook. A huge black shockwave swept across millions of kilometers of the wasteland continent. Wherever the aura of death passed, not a single blade of grass remained. The sovereigns who were closer to Lin Jun had to bear the brunt of Lin Jun's aura of death. Following a series of screams, the power of the explosion combined with the aura of death made these sovereigns wish they were dead. The dozen or so sovereigns who were close to him, including 2 supreme sovereigns and a free sovereign, were all blasted to smithereens. Many nascent souls screamed in the air, dying under the aura of death. The remaining sovereigns were lucky enough to survive because they hadn't been hit head-on. However, some of them spat out mouthfuls of blood, their injuries not light. After the self-destruction, Lin Jun's nascent soul floated alone between heaven and earth. Only a dozen or so sovereign god crystals rose around him and disappeared into the depths of the universe. The pseudo-sovereigns were really lucky that the Eternal Mountain had descended on Fantasy Town this time. A dozen god crystals and 3 special god crystals would help a large group of people. Just as Lin Jun had said, the universe's factions had really been reshuffled. There were less than 5 seconds left until the end of the mission. Some of the injured sovereigns saw an opportunity and prepared to attack again, hoping to kill Lin Jun's nascent soul at the last moment. Killing the body didn't count as death. Only by killing the nascent soul could the mission be considered complete. However, Lin Jun's nascent soul's eyebrows twitched and activated the time deceleration force field. Although the nascent soul didn't have any means other than mental attacks, it could still activate the force field. Time instantly became viscous. Everyone's speed was as slow as a snail's. Time stopped. The outside world temporarily stopped, but time was still flowing around Lin Jun. This method could only last for a short period of time, but it was enough because there were less than 2 seconds left. After 2 seconds, Lin Jun would have successfully survived this lifetime's calamity. At that moment, the Radiant Ruler attacked. When everyone was attacking Lin Jun, he didn't move. Instead, he was waiting for an opportunity because he knew that Lin Jun wouldn't be captured so easily. Charging forward now was definitely not a wise move. Now, a group of them had indeed died, and the rest were trapped in Lin Jun's time deceleration force field. Lin Jun was about to escape. The Radiant Ruler chose this moment to attack. The thin and long ultimate equipment in his hand was like a pole, and he attacked Lin Jun fiercely. At the last second, he wanted to break the force field and kill Lin Jun with a single blow. The timing was just right. However, he saw a smile that he would never forget. Lin Jun's nascent soul revealed a strange smile. Radiant Ruler, you seem to have forgotten that I still have a bolt of divine lightning. Above the nascent soul's head, in the sky, a bolt of lightning hidden in the dark clouds finally appeared. This was the final innate Bane ion of destruction. Lin Jun would leave it for his enemies, and also for himself. If he could use it at the last moment, he would use it. If it really didn't work, Lin Jun would rather commit suicide than give others the chance to kill him. Fortunately, light was delivered to his doorstep. The final innate Bane ion of destruction, which was known for its speed, smashed into the Radiant Ruler's body. The Radiant Ruler screamed. Although he blocked with his pole, the ion was too fast. He couldn't completely block it, and the deathly aura soon wrapped around him. Losing this opportunity meant losing his final chance. The final second of the dimensional universe's countdown ended. Lin Jun's nascent soul and the chaotic lotus spear both turned into motes of light and disappeared. Chapter 1404. When Lin Jun's nascent soul collapsed in the air, he glanced in the direction of Fallen Star Lake. Unfortunately, he could not see anything, nor did he have the time to think about it. However, he was certain that he had regrets in his heart. If the holy angel went to Fallen Star Lake, his wives would not be able to stop her. Once Fallen Star Lake fell, he could not guarantee what would happen, nor did he dare to think about it. Lin Jun kept telling himself that he did not have the power to interfere in this matter. What happened in his past life was in the past, and he could not do anything about it. However, one thing was for sure, and that was that his attitude was not proactive enough. If he had gone to Fallen Star Lake immediately after Nirvana in this life, he might have been able to save the place in the later stages of his life. As for the ninth life of Nirvana, he really did not have the power to interfere in it at the beginning. The outcome of Fallen Star Lake was obvious. At this moment, Lin Jun felt some regret. Between pursuing martial arts and worldly emotions, could it be that he could not have both? Was his choice the right one? The moment before his nascent soul collapsed, Lin Jun's last thought was that practicing martial arts was so tiring. Most of the time, it was not even as easy as being immortal. My parents, my wife, my children, I've harmed all of you. A wave of boundless darkness came. Light and shadow flashed before his eyes. Lin Jun knew that his ninth life of Nirvana was about to begin. Time seemed to have frozen. It seemed to be flowing, but it also seemed to have stopped. A voice rang in Lin Jun's ears. Lin Jun, do you regret practicing martial arts? Lin Jun's consciousness was hazy, and he could only rely on his instincts. He shook his head, then nodded. He did not know what he was doing. This was his subconscious controlling his actions. If that's the case, then begin your final life of Nirvana. Your future path is still up to you to decide. In a daze, Lin Jun woke up. He vaguely remembered that something seemed to have happened between the death of his eighth life and the beginning of his ninth life. Someone seemed to have spoken to him, but he could not recall it all. Forget it. If I can't remember, then I won't think about it. Let's begin my ninth life. Previously, every time Lin Jun underwent Nirvana, he would experience the process of being born. After all, people did not jump out of stone. But this time, it didn't happen. He could clearly feel that he had hands and feet. He was already an adult. What's going on? Shouldn't I be in my ninth reincarnation? He was certain that he was in his ninth life because in this life, he had a mission, a choice. He just didn't know what this choice was. Slowly opening his eyes, Lin Jun was stunned. In front of him was a narrow and dim corridor. There was a turbid smell in the air, which was very sensitive to Lin Jun, who had practiced martial arts for many years. This kind of air was not good for cultivation. In such an environment, it was impossible to become a strong warrior. Where am I? Why does it feel so familiar? Lin Jun looked at the narrow space around him. The more he looked at this place, the more familiar it seemed. There was a rusty metal door in front of him, and the words XXX Security Door Factory were vaguely written on it. This door, it seems to be something from Earth's Christian calendar. The more Lin Jun thought about it, the more puzzled he became. He pushed the door open and walked out. His hands were weak. This body of his was in his teens, but he did not practice martial arts. When the door opened, Lin Jun saw his father, Lin Lie, using an old soy milk machine to make soy milk. Seeing Lin Jun return, his father smiled and said, "Son, you're back. Quickly wash your hands. Your mother stewed fish. Dinner is about to be served." On the left was the kitchen. His mother, Li Qin, walked out of the kitchen and took the initiative to take off Lin Jun's outer clothes. She said to Lin Jun, "You must be tired. Have a good rest. The exam is about to start. Don't give yourself too much pressure. The family can still survive." Lin Jun looked at his parents in a daze. He felt a little absent-minded. His parents were obviously ordinary people in their 30s. However, compared to his previous life, his parents were much older. Their skin was not good, and their health was not good. Before Nirvana, Lin Jun brought his parents to the immortal realm. They were immortal, healthy and healthy. Naturally, they were in a much better state. But the problem was, how could Lin Jun see his parents when they were mortals? Lin Jun opened his mouth. He vaguely understood something, but he had no way to explain it to his mother. How did you become a fool? Let me guess what my son is thinking about. The person my son is thinking about must be the eldest daughter of the Yin family. And Ning, right? Li Qin smiled as if she knew Lin Jun's secret. Son, we should be more realistic. And Ning is a rich family. She's not a good match for our family. You should find someone with a similar family background. Mom will be satisfied. While Li Qin was talking, Lin Liye had already gone to serve the dishes. As the dishes were placed on the table, Li Qin continued to nag. Son, you must be successful. Don't be like Mom and Dad, still living in this apartment in the slums. Even if you can't get into those dojos, it doesn't matter. You have to find a suitable job. Don't be like your dad, going out to sell buns. Lin Jun suddenly turned around and returned to his room. He easily found the place where the calendar was placed in his memories. It was clearly recorded. Year 986 of the God Change era. Lin Jun remembered this date very clearly, because this date was the day Lin Jun was reborn. Lin Jun's rise to power began on this day. Who would have thought that after going around in circles for so many years, Lin Jun would return to this day? Compared to his rebirth, the only difference was that he had directly returned home. Could it be that he had to start over again? No. He still only had 100 years. This was his 9th nirvana. Choice. The mission of this life was to make a choice. However, there was only this simple word. There was no other introduction. Lin Jun was a bit confused. Why did he return to the past in this life? Why did he return to his previous world? Could it be that everything that happened in the past had been reversed? Who had such great power to reverse time and space in the entire universe? After all, Lin Jun had traveled through half the universe. Too many things had happened. Could it really be reversed? Lin Jun was a bit skeptical. He could ignore those questions if he couldn't understand them. However, there was a crucial difference between this time and his previous life. When he heard his parents talk about martial arts and the dojos, Lin Jun actually felt a bit disgusted. I actually hate martial arts. What's going on? Lin Jun saw an old computer in the corner. The computer was very old, but it was still fresh in his memory. This was because Lin Jun knew that he had bought Ouyang Yu's spirit power potion from his computer. From there, he had embarked on the path of a spirit reader master. Chapter 1405. The computer was turned on and the website was logged in. Lin Jun once again saw the mental strength potion that Ouyang Yu had used to show off on the website. Two voices were fighting in his heart. One was his martial arts instincts, which kept telling him that there was no way to escape. You are a natural martial artist. You have the best talent and the most experience. Train well, and you will definitely reach the peak. Isn't this your dream? The other voice was caused by his regret. Lin Jun, are you going to walk the same path as you did in your previous life? You failed in your previous life. Your parents and family were killed because of you. Are you going to hurt them again in this life? Isn't it good to live an ordinary life? You can't be so selfish. Lin Jun was in a dilemma. After the start of his 9th life, he didn't know why his mind was in a mess. His thoughts weren't so clear. This kind of choice made it difficult for him to make a decision. Just when he couldn't make up his mind, there was a knock on the door. His father opened the door and an old man came in. His hair was white, but his spirit was hale and hearty. Lin Liye introduced him to Lin Jun. Lin Jun, this is your Uncle Chun. He's father's friend. Haha, this must be your son Lin Jun. He's really a talented young man. Lin Jun knew that this Uncle Chun was a single old man. He didn't have any children or a wife. He lived alone. However, Lin Jun only met him a few times in his previous life. He didn't have much of an impression of this old man. He only knew that he and his father would go fishing sometimes. However, this person didn't appear in his previous life. He didn't know what had changed in this life. Old Chin sat down and chatted with the father and son of the Lin family. After chatting, Lin Jun found out that Old Chun was actually an engineer. He studied mechanical technology. Earth was in a period of divine change. Outside of the base cities, all the places were occupied by mutant beasts. Apart from martial artists, many technicians didn't have the ability to move around in the wild. Therefore, some mechanical technology came into being. Robots could work in the wild. Some special vehicles could also travel in the wild to ensure the safety of people. These technologies needed to be developed by someone. Lin Jun's father, Lin Jun, hoped that Lin Jun could become a technician. After chatting for a while, Old Chun asked Lin Jun, "Lin Jun, are you interested in learning from me?" At this moment, Li Qin interrupted, "My son wants to be a martial artist." "What's so good about being a martial artist? All that fighting and killing. Who knows when you'll end up dead in the wilderness?" Mechanical technology is also very advanced now. My dream is to transplant a human's mind into a machine one day. That way, there won't be a need for a body. It'll be enough to have a mechanical body. Wouldn't that be much better than being a martial artist? Lin Lie's eyes lit up. Then this kind of machine must be very expensive. Of course, but the researchers don't need to spend money. Once the sample is out, you can just make your own set. At this point, Lin Jun and Li Qin agreed to let Lin Jun learn mechanical engineering from Old Chun. At this moment, Lin Jun's mind was in a mess. He was a little absent-minded and unknowingly agreed to Old Chun's request. Then, Lin Jun followed Old Chun to his house and began learning mechanical engineering. The matter of buying the mental strength potion was left unsettled. Although the matter was a little inappropriate, Lin Jun didn't think it was a big deal. That was because he could still vaguely remember some things. Before the last nirvana, he seemed to have vaguely heard a voice. He was very familiar with this voice. It was like the voice that had always guided him forward. There was a sense of familiarity. He believed that this person wouldn't harm him. Therefore, in this life, he just had to follow his heart. However, Lin Jun still couldn't make up his mind to completely give up on martial arts. Let's just muddle through and see how it goes. After a day of learning, Old Chun believed that Lin Jun had the talent to learn mechanical engineering and could inherit his mantle. He said that he wanted to take Lin Jun as his disciple. Lin Jun couldn't bear to disappoint Old Chun's expectations, so he agreed. After becoming Lin Jun's master, Old Chun began to care about Lin Jun's life in detail. He was involved in almost everything Lin Jun did. He said that he had no children in his life, so he treated Lin Jun as his son. Lin Jun didn't care and let him do as he pleased. The next day, Lin Jun went to school. Old Chun even went to see him off. He told Lin Jun not to apply for a martial arts center. There was no future for him. Lin Jun agreed. After arriving at school, he canceled the application for a martial arts center. This surprised many people in the class because almost no one would voluntarily give up the opportunity to become a martial artist. Did Lin Jun eat the wrong medicine? And Ning, the most beautiful girl in the class, was very disappointed. And Ning had a good impression of Lin Jun. She even looked forward to their future. However, Ning was the child of a big family. If Lin Jun wanted to be with her, he must have a certain status. The best way for poor people to improve their status was to practice martial arts. However, she didn't expect that Lin Jun would give up this opportunity. This basically announced that it was impossible between him and Ning. And Ning's mood was very low. Lin Jun couldn't bear to see it. After all, this was his wife, and she had given birth to 2 children for him. How could he see her sad? However, Lin Jun suppressed his emotions. Since he had made up his mind not to provoke her, it was better not to complicate matters. And Ning could enter the immortal stage even if she didn't want to be with him. Perhaps she would be happier than she was in her previous life. On the contrary, some people who didn't like Lin Jun were not hostile to him this time. After all, if he didn't apply for a martial arts club or become a martial artist, he wouldn't be in the same world as them. There was no need to target him. When Lin Jun finished school, Old Chun came over again. Haha, Lin Jun, I can see the word heartbroken on your face. You must be in a bad mood. Come. Accompany this old man to fish and relax. I'll let you know that changing your way of life is also an experience. Lin Jun raised his head and looked at Old Chun. His eyes narrowed slightly, and then he nodded and followed Old Chun. The two of them went to a fish pond in the Bay City. This was very rare in the Bay City, where every inch of land was worth an inch of gold. It was obvious that Old Chin's status was quite high. Old Chin's fishing skills were good. Under his guidance, Lin Jun slowly got used to fishing and felt that it could calm his mind. In this way, Winter came and summer went. Before he knew it, Lin Jun was already 30 years old. All these years, his days had been the same every day. His original ambition seemed to have been completely worn away. He focused on his skills, fishing, and accompanying the old man every day. He didn't need to talk much. Lin Jun also didn't look for a girlfriend. However, Lin Jun still couldn't make the final decision regarding the mission of his ninth life. Chapter 1406. That unreconciled voice was his desire to pursue martial arts. As a martial artist who has always been determined to reach the peak, this heart of martial arts is very strong. It conflicts with the idea of being tired of practicing martial arts in his previous life. It's not easy to extinguish this heart of martial arts. Every time Lin Jun is around old Chun, his heart will calm down. It seems that this person has the ability to make people feel at ease. Moreover, Lin Jun found that there seems to be some deviation in his memory. He clearly returned to the original Earth, but many things didn't happen in his memory. And Ning is here, but there are not many people from the past. For example, Su Mingwei and some of his enemies are not here. In this way, Lin Jun won't see some people from the past, which will cause mental fluctuations. Moreover, his parents seem to be in good health. After so many years, his parents haven't aged, and they seem to have no problem living for more than 100 years. And Ning occasionally appears on TV, but she still looks the same as before. She has no boyfriend, nor is she married. She lives like that, above the clouds in the eyes of ordinary people. More importantly, the invasion of the Sky River Empire hasn't happened yet. According to Lin Jun's memory, when he was 30 years old, the Sky River Empire will invade, but that day didn't come. Even a monster attack that should have happened in the previous Ice City area didn't happen. In his previous life, Lin Jun donated money to build a dam to prevent the monsters from entering the Ice City. But in this life, it didn't happen. The martial artists are still fighting, but they rarely appear in the eyes of ordinary people. The base city is impregnable, and the threat of monsters outside can't be felt at all. Life is as calm as a pool, without the slightest ripple. Lin Jun is 50 years old, but his parents are still healthy, and they don't look older than him. And this year, Lin Jun made a breakthrough in the field of scientific research, creating the first robot to simulate life. Although this robot still has many shortcomings that need to be improved, in theory, it can already replace the human body. As long as a human brain was transplanted, they could still have human thoughts. It was just a different body. Once this robot was successfully developed, the newspapers and television began to report on it. Everyone began to cheer. In the history of mankind, there was no greater invention than this. In an instant, Lin Jun became a national hero. His parents excitedly came to Lin Jun's side, tears streaming down their faces. Okay, son, I've always known that you're a good person. I've always believed that you can definitely achieve a major breakthrough in the field of scientific research. Look, now the people of the world are cheering for you. Your actions will fill a thick and colorful stroke in the history of mankind. Son, you don't know. I was chatting with some old neighbors yesterday. They were so envious of me. They all said that I gave birth to an amazing son. Some even want to build an ancestral hall for you and worship you as the savior of the world. Looking at his teary-eyed parents and the cheering people nearby, Lin Jun felt that his life was worth living. When Lin Jun was 65 years old, this research robot officially went on the market. At this time, Lin Jun's family was no longer in charge of the slums. The headquarters city moved them to a high-class residential area. They were treated even better than war god-level fighters. Moreover, there were 2 war god-level fighters standing guard for Lin Jun day and night. They became his bodyguards to protect Lin Jun, this special talent. From the gazes of the 2 war god-level fighters, Lin Jun could feel envy. Because even war god-level fighters can die. On Earth, there was no one who could live forever. There wasn't even anyone in the entire New Territories. Only by entering the primordial realm could one live forever. However, as the inventor of the robot, Lin Jun had the right to use a few robots for free. He could completely change his parents and himself into a robot body. It was fine for himself. After this life, the 9 revolutions of nirvana would be completed. However, he could completely let his parents live here without any regrets. They could live forever. Lin Jun had even thought about it. When he passed away at 100 years old, he would change his parents' bodies. As for what his future would be like, Lin Jun didn't know and didn't want to know. Living a peaceful life with his parents like this would be a perfect life. Old Chen still lived next to Lin Jun's house. Lin Jun was already 99 years old, but Old Chen was still alive and well. Although he was also a white-haired old man who was over 100 years old, he still had sharp eyes and ears. According to Old Chen, he was the one who taught Lin Jun his entire life and helped Lin Jun achieve so much. Lin Jun had to change his body into a robot body before he passed away. Lin Jun's mechanical research skills had long surpassed his master. Even if the headquarters city wasn't responsible for Old Chen's body, Lin Jun could totally make one for him. Lin Jun had also thought about it. When he passed away, he would definitely change Old Chen's body. Apart from his parents and Old Chen, was there anyone else he cared about? Lin Jun turned on the TV. Ning's news was on. Ning was 99 years old, the same age as Lin Jun. Ning's body was still very healthy. After all, Ning was a warrior. In this life, Ning didn't become crazy. She had always been her. It seemed that she wouldn't have a problem living for another few hundred years, but she probably wouldn't be able to live any longer. After all, without Lin Jun's guidance, Ning's realm wouldn't be as high as it was in the mortal world. Old Chen chuckled when he saw Lin Jun looking at the TV. "My disciple, I often see you watching this girl on TV. Do you like her?" Lin Jun didn't say anything. "How about this? You can also make her a robot body. That way, she can live forever. You can rest assured, right?" Lin Jun turned his head and looked deeply at the old man who had taught him all his life. After a while, Lin Jun replied, "Master, what you said makes sense. Let's do it." Old Chen chuckled after he said this. Lin Jun smiled as well. He smiled and lowered his head. His heart was beating violently. It was the last year. In less than a year, Lin Jun's nirvana of 9 lives would end. He still hadn't made up his mind about his final decision. However, at this final moment, his martial heart began to beat restlessly. Could it be that he still had any regrets? He looked at the TV, his parents, and Old Chen. Lin Jun silently clenched his fists. Chapter 1407. The people living in this world heard a piece of news. Lin Jun, the hero who saved humanity, the greatest scientist, and the creator of the mechanical body, announced a decision. He will not be able to enjoy the benefits of a mechanical body and will leave this world after 100 years. The people were puzzled. They gathered together and started petitioning for Lin Jun to have an immortal mechanical body. Even the leaders of the base cities and countries came to ask Lin Jun to transplant his brain into a mechanical body. But Lin Jun rejected all these requests. Lin Jun had a good reason to reject all these requests. He could develop a mechanical body based on anyone's brain, but he could not develop his own. It was just like how fortune tellers could only predict people's fate, but not their own. Lin Jun was the creator of the mechanical body, and his words were the truth. No one could refute him. The people could only cry and wait for Lin Jun's death. Lin Jun had said a few days ago that he had overextended his brain and could only live for 100 years. After 100 years, he would die of old age. And that day had finally arrived. Lin Jun was 99 years, 11 months, and 30 days old. This was the last day. In the hospital of Bing City Base City, Lin Jun was lying on the bed, and the people around him were changing shifts. The leaders of various countries had arrived to express their condolences for Lin Jun. After Lin Jun's death, the whole world would have a month of bathing and fasting to remember him. Lin Jun smiled as he dealt with these officials. His body was in bad shape, and he had to force himself to carry on. After these irrelevant people left, only his family was left. A staff member brought in some documents, and Lin Jun signed them one by one. He left 2 mechanical bodies for his parents. After that, he signed another document and left 1 mechanical body for Ning. In the video, Ning and Lin Jun had their first long-distance conversation. "Lin Jun, in my heart, You have always been an outstanding person. However, I didn't expect you to do this and give me a mechanical body. I'm very grateful to you. I wish you all the best. I will live well and miss you." After watching Ning's video with a smile, she turned off the television. His parents are by Lin Jun's side. Although they were sad about Lin Jun's departure, they had already calmed down. After all, he was mentally prepared and could accept it. After all, it was rare for an ordinary person to live to 100 years old. His parents were proud of their son and Lin Jun. After chatting with his parents for a while, Lin Jun felt that it was about time. He said to his parents, "Dad, Mom, I'm tired. Can you go out for a while? I want to talk to Master." His parents knew that Lin Jun and Elder Chun had a deep relationship. Most of the time, Lin Jun was with Elder Chun. He even spent more time with Elder Chun than with his parents. Perhaps it was because their son wanted to say goodbye to Master. His parents got up and left the ward, closing the door. Only Lin Jun and Elder Chun were left in the ward. Elder Chun sat in front of Lin Jun's bed and looked at him with a slightly sad expression. "Master," Lin Jun's voice was slightly hoarse. "My disciple, if you have something to say, just say it. I know that there must be something in your heart that you haven't said. Master is listening. First of all, I would like to thank Master for his careful teaching and cultivation. Without Master's years of teaching, I wouldn't have been able to experience such a wonderful and fulfilling life." With that, Lin Jun sat up and bowed to Elder Chun. Elder Chun accepted it with a smile, but there was a trace of unconcealable surprise in his eyes. "To tell you the truth, Master, I really haven't experienced such a mortal life. This is my flaw, and it is also a step that I must complete. If I don't take this step, my life can't be considered complete." Elder Chun pondered for a moment. Then, "My disciple, do you feel that you are complete now? Don't you have unfulfilled wishes?" Lin Jun smiled. "What are you referring to, Master?" Elder Chun immediately said, "I heard from your mother that before you learned mechanical technology from me, your dream was to become a martial artist. Now, do you still have this dream?" A martial artist? A trace of longing appeared in Lin Jun's eyes, and then he said slowly, "I do have such a dream, but for so many years, there have been almost no martial artists around me, except for those 2 wooden bodyguards. And to tell you the truth, Master, looking at these 2 people, I feel that they are 2 pitiful creatures." Elder Chin's face revealed a satisfied expression. "That's right. What's so good about martial artists? They are nothing more than brutes who fight and kill. What can they contribute to humanity? How can they be compared to us?" Lin Jun shook his head. "I'm not talking about that. I feel that they are pitiful because they are frogs in a well. Do they think that they are amazing just because they have cultivated to the war god realm? They don't know what kind of concepts are above the war god realm, immortal realm, god transformation, god, ruler, and so on." Elder Chin's expression changed. "What is my disciple talking about? I don't really understand." "Hee. Master, we have already reached this point. Why are you still hiding it from me? You don't understand? Then in this world, I'm afraid that there is no one who understands more." With that, Lin Jun, who was on the verge of death, suddenly sat up straight. "Master, why do I feel calm when I am by your side? Don't you think of practicing martial arts? Can you give me an explanation?" Elder Chin's expression was calm. "Because my cultivation and state of mind have affected you." "I'm afraid not. I think Master has the ability to affect people's thinking." "Lin Jun, the more you speak, the more confusing it is. I don't understand. I just want to ask you, do you still want to practice martial arts?" "Hee. Master, why are you so anxious? You have been acting for 100 years. Why can't you hold it in now? But since you want to know so much, then I will tell your father." Lin Jun's eyes suddenly shone with a divine light. "I want to learn martial arts." This thought has never changed. His words were sonorous and loud. Following Lin Jun's words, the surrounding illusion changed abruptly. Everything began to fade and disappear, except for Elder Chin in front of him. Elder Chin's face was also somewhat distorted. His tone instantly turned as cold as ice, no longer as gentle as before. "How did you see through it? This shouldn't be. It's been 100 years. Why haven't you done anything?" It seems that you have been acting for too long. But you don't know that after acting for so long, There will be a time when the cat is out of the bag. Lin Jun's expression gradually returned to normal, and a vigorous aura emanated from his body. Your acting is very good, and it has indeed affected me. It may even have blinded me for the rest of my life. But let me ask you, when we talked about a Ning, how did you tell me that I would not have any regrets? At that time, I had not announced that I would die in 100 years. Could it be that Master can really predict the future? The corner of his mouth curved into a cold smile. Master, my mind is a little messy, but I'm not an idiot, especially when it comes to the topic of my lover. You should also know that a man's psychological taboo is his own woman. When I talked about a Ning, my thoughts were the most active. It was also at that time that I knew. Chapter 1408. Just as Lin Jin had said, he wasn't a fool. Elder Qin's mind manipulation technique wouldn't work forever. Whenever it touched a sensitive part of his heart, he would be on his guard. Elder Chun was anxious and hoped that Lin Jun would make the final decision as soon as possible. Instead, he revealed a flaw. Lin Jun, who was already on his guard, played along. Elder Qin's expression was ferocious. Since you already saw through it, why did you wait until the last moment to say so? Lin Jun sneered. It's very simple. It's because I lack the experience of a mortal in my life. I've been cultivating all the time, so I can make use of this time to settle my heart. This will be very beneficial for my future cultivation. So you're saying that you're using me? We're the same. If you want to use me, you should be mentally prepared to be used by me. At this point, you should show your true colors, right? As he spoke, Lin Jun suddenly raised his hand. Dimensional combined attack. The lotus spear, which hadn't been seen in 100 years, drew a streak of light in the air and tore through the sky. Elder Qin's figure distorted and collapsed under Lin Jun's attack. The shattered space swallowed everything, including Elder Chun. All of the illusions disappeared. A cold wind blew past Lin Jun's side. This was the wild continent. Lin Jun was still where he had been during his 8th reincarnation. He hadn't moved at all. Looking around, Lin Jun could even see the departing figures of the other sovereigns through his delusion breaker. I'm millions of kilometers away. 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye. The sovereigns who had surrounded Lin Jun and survived had already left, but Elder Chen hadn't. Lin Jun exhaled deeply. It's just a thought. He's not here at all. Using a thought to control my thoughts for 100 years, this person is terrifyingly powerful. Lin Jun hadn't expected Elder Chun to not be here. The one who had controlled his thoughts for 100 years was just a thought. This person was undoubtedly a sovereign expert, and not any of the sovereigns here. None of the sovereigns here had such power. Lin Jun used his delusion breaker to carefully scan the area. He saw that the radiant hegemon had already left, and it was impossible to catch up to him. This guy is trapped by my innate, baleful, deathly aura. However, the light elemental energy is a natural counter to deathly aura. Plus, I didn't hit him too hard. He might be able to survive. The person controlling my thoughts is definitely someone else. Although I have some guesses, I don't have any concrete evidence. I can't make an accurate judgment now. Lin Jun sat down in the starry sky. He believed that his 100 years of nirvanic rebirth were just an illusion. He had yet to experience the nirvanic rebirth of his 9th life. He was still patiently waiting for the arrival of his 9th reincarnation. However, at this moment, a voice rang out from the void. Lin Jun, are you ready? Ah, you are. Lin Jun completely recalled that after his 8 reincarnations, Elder Chun had used a voice similar to this to confuse him. However, now that he listened carefully, there was a difference. This was the person who had been guiding him all this time. Lin Jun was excited. I'm ready. No matter what, I'll complete the nirvanic rebirth of my final life. However, the person on the other side suddenly laughed. Ha! Lin Jun, oh Lin Jun, truth is falsehood, falsehood is truth. You thought that it was an illusion, but it was also reality. You did well in this life. The nirvanic rebirth of your 9th life will enrich your life experience, and it will be of great help to your final growth. The power of the universe that you nurtured will be nourished by the mortal experience of this life. It's about to mature. Lin Jun hurriedly looked at the chaos lotus in his body. Within the chaos lotus, the vigorous power of the universe was about to burst out at any moment. The flower bud seemed to be unable to contain the chaos airflow within. Strands of aura constantly shot out. It seemed like it could bloom at any moment and give birth to a new universe. The sovereign god crystal within the lotus seed could also break out at any moment. Once the sovereign god crystal was born, Lin Jun would become a sovereign that surpassed the limits of this universe. However, he was still a little bit short. Just a little bit, and everything would be completed. I actually completed the nirvanic rebirth of my 9th life? Lin Jun was pleasantly surprised. However, he was also curious. Why had his new universe not formed after the nirvanic rebirth? Logically speaking, you should have completed it. However, why haven't you broken through? You'll have to ask yourself, Lin Jun. Others can't answer this question. Is there something you haven't completed? Lin Jun, goodbye. I'll wait for the day you truly complete it. The voice became more and more distant and disappeared. No matter how Lin Jun called out, there was no response. Lin Jun sat there in a daze with his head lowered. What was missing? Why couldn't he complete the final breakthrough? According to the mysterious person's words, he had some true wish that he hadn't fulfilled. As a result, the power of the new universe couldn't be stimulated, and the sovereign god crystal couldn't be born. My heart, Lu Sheng muttered to himself. Lin Jun blinked. He wasn't stupid. His talent had already reached a heaven-defying stage. Naturally, he could understand his own heart. Regrets. I definitely have them. They're also the things I'm most unwilling to accept. I've never truly let go of. That's my family. Lin Jun suddenly raised his head. 2 brilliant beams of light pierced through the void in his eyes. He looked at the place he wanted to see but didn't dare to. That was Fallen Star Lake. Ever since the divine second angel went to Fallen Star Lake, this place had become Lin Jun's forbidden zone. He didn't dare to look. He was afraid that he would see many things that he couldn't accept. Although he claimed to have let go of the past and steeled his heart to ignore Fallen Star Lake, Lin Jun's heart had never truly been at peace. Now, he understood that if a warrior could not look directly into his own heart, he would not be able to create a new world or create a new universe. No matter how things developed, he had to face it and solve it. After seeing the light, Lin Jun directly looked at Fallen Star Lake. And Ning, Mingyue, Qing Xian, Little Phoenix, Little Fox, my parents, my children, one of you must survive. Don't leave me alone. If you're really gone, I'll take revenge for you, even if I have to turn the world upside down. After preparing himself for the worst, Lin Jun's gaze finally reached Fallen Star Lake. He thought that he would see a scene of devastation. However, what he saw made Lin Jun suck in a breath of cold air. Chapter 1409. Lin Jun had already prepared himself for the worst. If a Dominator attacked Meteor Lake, his wife and children definitely wouldn't be able to resist. It wouldn't be a battle on the same level. The current Meteor Lake was probably already in ruins. It would be lucky for even one person to survive. But what he saw in reality was completely different from what he saw. The 2 holy angels had indeed arrived. Lin Jun could even feel their trajectory in the air. But the result was completely different. In the sky above Meteor Lake, an intense battle was erupting. There were subjugation forces here, but the God Kings had all stepped aside. With the Dominators here, they didn't have a chance to display their abilities. But the holy angels were at a disadvantage. Opposite the holy angels, there were 2 Dominators fighting against them. One of the Dominators was like a transformer. He stood there like a fat kid. Sometimes his body would curl up and turn into a mini planet. It couldn't be called a mini planet. Sometimes it was a real giant planet. It could be big or small. This planet rampaged through the air. Facing the holy angels, it fiercely attacked. Its attacks were extremely ruthless. It actually forced the holy angels, a mid-level Dominator, to retreat step by step. Lin Jun was very familiar with this person. It was Steam Bun. Back then in Fantasy Town, Lin Jun had saved that planet youth. Now, after 1,000 years, Steam Bun had already grown up. He was no longer a small planet. He was now a huge planet. Everything on this planet was complete. This meant that Steam Bun had entered the mature stage. He had obtained the water element dominator crystal, which filled his planet with vitality. This also caused his strength to increase greatly. Lin Jun could clearly sense that Steamed Bun's current strength was comparable to that of an ordinary dominator. At the very least, a mid-level dominator could only defend in front of him. If the Holy Angels joined forces, Steam Bun might not be their match. But Steam Bun had a companion. This companion was the other person Lin Jun had given the Dominator Crystal to, the youth He Tu. After 1,000 years, He Tu had also matured a lot. The young and inexperienced youth from back then had disappeared and was replaced by a handsome and mature man. His every movement was elegant and handsome. The weapon in his hand was a top-grade weapon, and it was unknown where he had gotten it from. His spear technique was exquisite. Even Lin Jun's spear technique had many redeeming qualities. He was facing God's angel, who was stronger than Saint's angel. But in front of Black Soil, God's angel was nowhere to be found. Black Soil's strength was definitely above Steam Bun's. Steam Bun's strength was close to that of an exalted dominator, while Black Soil had the strength of an exalted dominator. He was even close to a special dominator. The spear in his hand was like a dragon, completely suppressing the angel of God. The two angels were battered and exhausted by He Tu and Steamed Bun's attacks. Their wings were riddled with holes, and they no longer looked like angels. They had turned into birdmen. What's going on? Why is there a sovereign protecting Starfall Lake in secret? The two angels were on the verge of breaking down. They had come here to show off their might and experience the thrill of slaughter. They hadn't expected to run into two such powerful rulers. Steam Bun chuckled. Idiot! How dare you target my big brother Lin's family? You're just courting death. Ah, I remember you guys. You guys became sovereigns in Fantasy Town. That's right. We became sovereigns because of Big Brother Lin. Now that Big Brother Lin isn't here, Big Brother He Tu and I just finished our mission in Beast King Prison. When we saw the situation in the dimensional universe, we immediately came to protect him. Without a sovereign, it wouldn't be convenient for us to bully the weak. But who would have thought that you two idiots would come? Then let's settle the old and new debts together. Seeing Steamed Bun chattering away, God's angel clench his teeth in anger. Mighty sovereigns are actually acting as guard dogs for someone else. How embarrassing. Even though Steamed Bun was chubby, his mouth didn't show any mercy. You fellows who don't understand the human language, we're the ones who have received the grace of a little water, and we have to repay it with a gushing spring. The way I see it, you two are the dogs, the watchdogs of the Radiant Sovereign, and you still have the heart to come here and cause trouble? Your master is probably not far from death. When the time comes, you two homeless dogs won't even be able to find your way home. Ha ha. They were all sovereigns and knew the situation in the Wild Continent. Even though it wasn't convenient for ordinary people to hear, they could all understand each other. Waha, you two new sovereigns are actually so arrogant. God's angel and Saint's angel didn't like Steamed Bun and wanted to attack him together. However, Steamed Bun wasn't an idiot. Even though he couldn't fight one against two, he still had Hey Tuesday Boss He Tu. You're known as a peerless genius. It's time for you to show off. He Tu, who hadn't said a word, moved and stood in front of Saint's angel. Want to eat Steam Bun? Eat a mouthful of dirt first. The spear in his hand rolled out. He alone blocked two sovereigns, and he had more than enough to spare. He Tu's performance shocked Saint's angel. He was originally an unknown person, but he was actually so powerful. They didn't consider that when Lin Jun entered the top 30 of Fantasy Town's Divine Monument, apart from Lin Jun, the other 20 or so were all Sovereign's disciples. There was only one exception, and that was He Tu. To be able to stand out in such a situation, one could see that this person's talent was absolutely astonishing. If those people weren't Sovereign's disciples, if there wasn't a peerless genius like Lin Jun, then He Tu's talent would be number one in the entire universe. Thus, even though He Tu hadn't cultivated for a long time, he still wasn't someone Saint's angel could defeat. The two of them couldn't even take down He Tuesday. At this moment, Steam Bun ran to the side with a smile to watch the battle. Handsome Hei-Tu perform well. I'll leave these two good-for-nothings to you. Hei-Tu smiled bitterly. Defeating them is easy, but I'm afraid others will come. Don't be afraid even if they come. Don't forget, we also have reinforcements here. There are quite a few special sovereigns who have a close relationship with our big brother Lin. As he spoke, Steam Bun turned to Meteor Lake and shouted, Uncle, Auntie, sisters-in-law, don't worry. Just stay here and relax. Leave these good-for-nothings to me. His voice was very loud, and the entire Meteor Lake could hear him. However, he completely ignored Hei-Tu, who was fighting bitterly. It was as if all the credit belonged to him. Within Meteor Lake, Lin Jun's family finally smiled. After fighting bitterly for more than 800 years, they finally saw the light. Chapter 14:10. Seeing this scene, even Lin Jun, who had a heart of stone, couldn't help but feel moved and excited. What a close call. He spat out a long breath of turbid air. That breath penetrated the starry sky and even pierced through hundreds of meteorites in an asteroid belt before disappearing into the vast universe. Today, Lin Jun's strength was definitely top-notch, even among the rulers. As long as he wasn't surrounded by many people, there weren't many people in the entire universe that Lin Jun needed to worry about. Moreover, the scene of Lin Jun being surrounded probably wouldn't happen again. This was because everyone knew that Lin Jun had already died from self-detonation. Even if someone knew that Lin Jun was still alive, it wouldn't be easy to gather a group of rulers. Those who wanted to kill Lin Jun back then were either dead or injured. There weren't many left. Lin Jun knew that above Meteor Lake, Hei-Tu and Steam Bun didn't think he was still alive either. They already knew about his self-detonation, but they didn't tell his family. The people here were also forcefully holding on. Even though Hei-Tu and Steam Bun had a certain advantage, it wasn't enough to kill the Holy Angel. If other rulers came with hatred or 2 more reinforcements, Meteor Lake would still be in danger. Phew, I can't let my family wait any longer. I have to rush back immediately. With Lin Jun's current ability, it wasn't easy to travel through the wild continent to Meteor Lake. Traveling through the entire endless sea of stars was 1,000,000,000 light-years away. Even if he traveled through parallel universes at superluminal speed, it would take him at least 100 years. 100 years to reach Meteor Lake. No matter how the situation developed, it would be too late. Lin Jun needed a faster flying method. Currently, Lin Jun's 9th reincarnation was only 1 step away from perfection. His good assistant Crazy wouldn't be able to awaken, and no one would be able to help him in time. However, Lin Jun had his own method. If it was in the past, Lin Jun would also be helpless. However, after his 9th reincarnation as a mortal, his understanding of the new universe was becoming more and more perfect. He had already found a method that belonged solely to him. Dimensional positioning, spatial shift. Materialism believed that there could be other spatial worlds outside the universe that were parallel to the one he was in. They were adjacent and overlapped, but they couldn't enter each other. However, when the world's order was often disrupted at a certain point in time, it would lead to the occurrence of supernatural phenomena. For example, a spatial door suddenly opened, or a person or a plane would suddenly enter a strange space, or even disappear in public. Some people disappeared, never to return. Some people returned, but lost some of their memories. There were also a few people who came back with their memories, but what they said was treated as a lunatic and was not accepted. It was impossible for them to cause any waves in society. In fact, what they had entered was an overlapping universe. 2 universes, or even 3 or 4 universes. This kind of special space-time disorder was uncontrollable and irregular. However, if a person had the power to control another space-time, he could even create a spatial intersection. With Lin Jun's current power in the new universe, although the overflowing power of the universe wasn't enough to affect the general direction and range of this world, it was still possible to create a foothold in the new universe at a small point. Lin Jun's chaotic universe, although small compared to the size of this universe, was still another parallel universe. It was connected to this universe in a broad sense. Lin Jun could position himself in the demonic planet the dark light realm, and the primordial realm. He could even position himself in the new territories and use the power of the new universe to teleport to the largest location within his power. Of course, Lin Jun couldn't position himself infinitely far yet. He couldn't teleport from the current wasteland continent to the new territories, nor could he reach the Fallen Star Lake. He still needed to take a few steps. He even needed to rest midway. After all, this kind of positioning consumed too much energy. However, compared to normal flight, it was much faster. He didn't need 100 years, 10 years, a year, or even half a year or 3 months. Lin Jun could easily reach the Fallen Star Lake from the wasteland continent in a month at most. If he didn't stop, he could reach in half a month. Lin Jun also believed that the situation at the Fallen Star Lake wouldn't really change in half a month. At the very least, the rulers who left the wasteland continent wouldn't be able to reach the Fallen Star Lake in half a month. If they wanted to reach there, 30 years would be the limit. Therefore, although Lin Jun was in a hurry, he wasn't too worried. After sitting cross-legged for a while, Lin Jun patiently searched for the position of the dimensional positioning. Although the new universe hadn't officially opened, it could already provide him with a lot of help. He could see the entire old universe through the dimensional power. The entire new universe was his eyes. It overlapped with the old universe in an environment. The old universe was a huge egg-shaped world. The primordial realm was the yolk, and the barrier between it and the new territories was the membrane between the yolk and the egg white. The new territories was the egg white. The shell of the egg was a little irregular because this universe was still growing. The new territories were expanding, and even the primordial realm was expanding. The distance of more than 1 trillion light-years had been reduced to a scale that could be seen with the naked eye. The scale of this scale couldn't be calculated. Lin Jun could see where he was. He was on the other side of the primordial realm, on the other side of the endless sea of stars, the wasteland continent. If he wanted to teleport using the dimensional positioning, the fastest way was to pass through the endless sea of stars. With my current ability, using half of my godly power to travel is the fastest way to maximize efficiency. However, after using my godly power to teleport, I need some time to rest. I'd better not waste this time because I still have other things to do, which is to cultivate the 8th level of life genes. There were 9 levels of life genes. Lin Jun had already reached the 7th level and could cultivate the 8th level with his current ability. However, this was the wasteland continent. There was no way to buy gene potions. One could only buy them by passing through the endless sea of stars. Let's go. I'll leave now. I'll take a bottle of gene potion from there and cultivate as I go. Lin Jun quickly located the first location. It was a planet 30 million light-years away from the wasteland continent. It was also a planet with life. This will be my first battle. I'll try to reach the Fallen Star Lake within a month and end this battle completely. With a thought, Lin Jun's entire body rumbled. A puff of green smoke rose from where he was, and he disappeared instantly. He was like a bullet, but no bullet could compare to his speed. He instantly crossed the endless sea of stars and completely left the primordial realm continent. Goodbye, wasteland continent. Goodbye, my 9th nirvana. Chapter 14:11. Lin Jun's first teleport wasn't accurate enough. He deviated from the predetermined location by 980 million kilometers. This number seemed huge, but it was actually very small compared to the distance measured in tens of millions of light years. It was so small that it could be ignored. However, Lin Jun didn't want to ignore it. He didn't want to miss it because he didn't have enough divine power after one of his teleportations. He sat down to rest, recover his divine power, and set off again. The second time, Lin Jun grasped the skill and narrowed the gap to 50 million kilometers. The third time, he was only 1 million kilometers away. On the fourth time, Lin Jun accurately landed on a predetermined asteroid. Phew, it's not easy to master this teleportation skill. Even if Chris was here, she wouldn't give me any hints or help. This is because there's no precedent for this in the entire dimensional universe. Lin Jun was very happy that he mastered the skill. Time after time, he teleported across the distant space and time under his feet. At this moment, Lin Jun also deeply realized the strength of the enemy behind him. For example, the person who used a string to send the holy angel to Fallen Star Lake was very powerful. At the very least, they were much more powerful than him. Moreover, Lin Jun didn't know who this person was. This was also the main point. The improvement of his strength was still imminent. 7 days passed. Lin Jun had already crossed half of the endless sea of stars and arrived near the Skyfire continent. He didn't go to the main city of the continent. Instead, he chose a shortcut to land on a life planet. Lin Jun could now accurately land on a planet, but it was still difficult for him to choose a specific landing spot on the planet. After all, in the vast universe, the size of a planet was really insignificant. This time, Lin Jun's landing spot was a little off. He planned to land in the city center of this planet, but he missed by a few dozen kilometers. He landed in a bathhouse. The bathhouse was magnificent. It seemed to be a palace. When he landed, he saw something he shouldn't have seen. A young married woman with a voluptuous figure was taking a bath with a little girl. The young woman was currently bending over to wipe the little girl's body. Her plump buttocks were raised high, and the beautiful scene was enough to make people spurt blood. Lin Jun glanced at her and felt a bit of fire in his heart. This young woman was very attractive. See no evil. Lin Jun was a gentleman. He definitely wouldn't look a third time. Just as Lin Jun was about to retract his gaze, the little girl opened her mouth wide and stared blankly at him. A pretty girl tilted her head and looked at Lin Jun curiously. She was curious as to how this uncle had come here. Lin Jun was a little embarrassed. He quietly raised a finger at the little girl and made a shushing gesture. Then, he quietly teleported away from the bath. His landing was a little bad, and when he landed in the water, there was still a splash. The young woman turned around. Her eyes were as charming as a cat's. Looking at the ripples on the water surface, Xiao Chun felt somewhat surprised. Then, she looked at her daughter and seemed to have seen something. She asked, "Tao Tao, tell Mother, what did you see just now?" The little girl looked up. "Mother, there was an uncle standing behind you just now. He told me not to make a sound." "Ah, what did you say?" The young woman immediately recalled her posture. If there was a man standing behind her, wouldn't that be? Her pretty face immediately flushed red. The young woman didn't think there was a ghost. If there was someone behind her, then it had to be a powerful martial artist. There were also divine transformation level guards outside the bathhouse, but they didn't notice at all. This meant that the intruder was powerful. The young woman was extremely embarrassed. She didn't expect someone to sneak into the palace. Who was it? Tao Tao. Do you remember what the person behind you looked like? Tao Tao bit her finger. He was very handsome, but I don't really remember. The young woman blushed for a long time, but she couldn't find anyone. She could only swallow her grievances. "Let's go, Tao Tao. I've already washed up. Mother will take you to the auction. There are many good things today." "Mother, are we not going to wait for Father?" "No, our country is facing war. Your father and the officials are discussing countermeasures. We won't be of much help even if we go." A trace of worry appeared on the young woman's face. She loved her family and her country, but as a woman, she couldn't do too much. She only hoped to go to the auction house and get a very effective protective talisman. She hoped that her family and country would be stable and prosperous. The auction was hosted by the Dimensional Universe Corporation. Although she was the empress of a country, she didn't have any special privileges. She had to participate in the official auction. A white horse pulled a carriage. The young woman brought her daughter to attend this high-class auction. Lin Jun left the bathhouse and quickly understood this planet through the dimensional universe. It was a low-level civilization's star system and a low-level civilization's planet. There were many countries on it. The country he was in was called Han and Tang. It was a name that Lin Jun liked very much. The country's ruler was self-disciplined. There was only one empress, and the people lived and worked in peace. However, it was attacked by neighboring countries. The situation was critical. Lin Jun wasn't in the mood to care about other people's business. He only wanted to finish his business as soon as possible. He received news that an auction was going to be held here. There was something that Lin Jun needed. Mutated sky bamboo gene. In the Han and Tang countries of this planet, a special plant grew. It was called the sky bamboo. This type of bamboo would always grow upwards. It was extremely tough, but it had a problem. It would rather break than bend. Even if it met with obstacles, it would still grow upwards until the day it broke. Some sky bamboo could even grow out of the atmosphere. However, they would eventually be destroyed by meteorites. The mutated sky bamboo that Lin Jun needed was the best among the sky bamboo species. Only one would be born every era on the planet. This type of mutated bamboo could withstand strong natural disasters and pressure. It could grow without limit. If it was allowed to grow, a life planet would be nothing more than a flower pot. Therefore, this type of bamboo was closely monitored from the moment it was born. When it reached a certain level, it would be put down and made into a level 8 life G medicine. This planet had been born for so long. Only once in the Earth's crust had a mutated sky bamboo, and once in the Ice Age. Now, in the new generation, the third mutated sky bamboo had attracted many people from nearby planets to buy it. Lin Jun was now in the God Realm. He could freely use the wealth there. He didn't dare to speak about other aspects, but Lin Jun's wealth in the God Realm was so great that it was incalculable. Therefore, his goal this time was to obtain the mutated sky bamboo gene. This was because every time Lin Jun faced a ruler, he would be suppressed by the other party's ruler domain. This type of bamboo gene allowed Lin Jun's divine power to penetrate the other party's ruler domain. Therefore, this item was extremely important to Lin Jun. He had to obtain it. Chapter 14:12. The so-called back row tickets were basically standing tickets. Although there was a small bench to sit on, those that could sit in the back row couldn't be high officials or nobles. They also didn't have the ability to participate in the auction, so having a place to sit was enough. To put it bluntly, they were just bystanders that came to watch the fun. Lin Jun's seat was at the side of the passage. The advantage of being here was that the view wasn't bad. Not only could he clearly see the situation on the auction stage, but he could also see great figures passing by. The martial strength of this planet was decent. The strongest person here had reached the divine transformation realm. For instance, the bath that Lin Jun went to had a divine, transformation guard. But there were very few divine transformation martial artists. Those that could reach the longevity realm and three-flower realm were considered decent here. Lin Jun's current realm was disguised as a peak world king. There were many peak world kings, and many of them couldn't break through to the longevity realm. This wasn't too disdainful or conspicuous. "Excuse me, come a bit." Lin Jun went to his seat. It was a long bench for two people, and a fatty was sitting on it. The fat man wasn't simple either. He was a 5th-level region king, but compared to Lin Jun's current peak world king, he was much worse. The fat man moved his butt inwards, allowing Lin Jun to sit beside him. Lin Jun had just sat down when the fat man came over. Lin Jun had met countless people over the years. This fat man was the type that was easy to get along with. Lin Jun had met many such people. He looked at the fat man as if he wanted to say something. "Big brother, are you here to see the National Protecting Symbol auction today?" "Oh, why do you say that?" Lin Jun hadn't paid attention to the National Protecting Symbol and didn't know what it was used for. Some talisman techniques were useful in the early stages of a martial artist, but they would disappear in the later stages. This was because no talisman could suppress a supermaster. Even if Lin Jun had been suppressed at the Myriad Foot Mountain, it was mainly because of the mountain's strength and not because of talismans. At Lin Jun's current realm, he wasn't someone that talismans could suppress. He, of course. Who am I? I'm the Hantang by Xiaosheng. There's nothing that I don't know about here. The appearance of the kingdom protecting talisman can stabilize the nation's fate and protect the imperial city. With this talisman, the imperial city will never fall. I dare say that most of the people here today are here for the kingdom's stabilizing talisman, but those who are truly qualified to participate in the auction, I'm afraid there aren't many. Upon hearing this, Lin Jun's interest was piqued. Oh, suppressing the fate of a nation and protecting the royal capital? Lin Jun had never heard of this kind of talisman, and he really wanted to see it for himself. Bai Xiaosheng continued, "The appearance of the country stabilizing talisman has caused all the countries in this world to go crazy. Although the auction will be held in Han and Tang, the other countries have already sent people over to get the country stabilizing talisman. Think about it. This is a competition between countries. What kind of person has the ability to participate in the auction? Not even the richest man in the world. Lin Jun nodded slightly. If this kind of talisman really existed, then it was true. Bai Shaoxing shook his head. But I think that no matter how the other countries fight, they can't compete with us. In terms of national strength, Han and Tang are the world's #1. No other country can compare to Han and Tang. Moreover, this is our home ground. How can they compete with us? Lin Jun smiled. Are you so sure? Of course. Although the situation is turbulent and the front line is tense, as far as I know, the #1 beauty of Han and Tang, who is also the Empress of Han and Tang, will personally participate in the auction. This shows that she is determined to get the country stabilizing talisman. The #1 beauty of Han and Tang. Lin Jun couldn't help but think of the beautiful scene in the bathtub just now. That young woman should be the Empress. She was indeed beautiful. Yes, the Empress is the goddess of the people of Han and Tang. You can see her celestial appearance later. Bai Shaoxing looked forward and waited for the Empress to appear. Lin Jun stopped talking and looked at today's auction items. With Lin Jun's experience and knowledge, none of the items here could catch his eye, except for the unique sky-raising bamboo. The mutated sky-raising bamboo gene medicine was probably the second most expensive item here, second only to the country stabilizing talisman. In Lin Jun's opinion, the sky-raising bamboo should be the most expensive item, but it wasn't that expensive because the mutated plant gene medicine could only be used at level 8. The requirements were very strict. Martial artists at this level were all rulers and had ruler domains. Normally, they wouldn't choose this kind of bamboo. So, this thing was a bit useless. In fact, people bought it for other purposes and not to consume it as a gene medicine. Her Majesty the Empress has arrived, the guard at the door announced. Under the protection of several guards, the Empress and her princess appeared. There weren't many guards, and one of them was in the divine will transformation stage, which was enough to deal with thousands of soldiers and horses. The Empress wore a beautiful long dress and walked through the crowd with a graceful smile. Wherever she passed, people automatically bowed to show their respect. She was holding a little girl in one hand. The little girl was very cute. Her black eyes were looking around, just like her mother. Her eyes were like a cat's. Under everyone's gazes, the Empress walked to the front row and sat down. There was a seat for her. There were many people in the front row, all representatives of other countries. Although everyone was in a state of war, this was the Dimensional Universe Corporation's auction house. No one dared to cause trouble here. All along, the Dimensional Universe Corporation had been aloof. It never interfered with the affairs of any country and made a fortune in silence. TSK, as expected of my goddess. Even with a child, she's still so beautiful. Just looking at her from afar makes me feel like the world is beautiful. If you're safe, the sky will be clear. Bai Shaoxing sighed with emotion, which made Lin Jun feel really scared. However, Lin Jun wasn't as optimistic as Bai Shaoxing. According to his investigation, the Han and Tang dynasties were indeed the strongest countries on this planet. But now that they were at war with several powerful countries, they had more than one opponent. Could the other party let them obtain the country protecting talisman so easily? Lin Jun was very doubtful. However, this was none of his business. He could leave as long as he obtained the mutated Atlas bamboo. Soon, the host said a few words and the auction began. Lin Jun wasn't interested in the first treasure and closed his eyes to rest. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, more than an hour had passed. All the treasures were sold. The second last item was the mutated Atlas bamboo that Lin Jun needed. Chapter 14:13. Mutated Atlas bamboo, a plant that could penetrate the starry sky, was now made into a small bottle of medicine. It was green, sparkling, and dazzling. When the host took out the treasure, he also made a solemn introduction. Mutated Atlas bamboo is a special product of our planet. Every time the Earth's crust changes and the mountains and rivers change, it is born from the energy of the Earth's veins. It is incomparably tough and powerful, and its sharp aura can break through all domains You are lucky to see this Atlas bamboo this time. The starting price of this medicine is 100 million, and each bid must not be less than 10 million. Although the host said it well, the people present did not buy it. It was a good thing, but unfortunately, it was not very useful. After a while, the first person spoke and raised a sign. This gentleman has bid 100 million. He really has good taste. With the first bid, some of the people they liked also started to raise their placards. There were a few of them. When the price reached 170 million, the Empress slowly spoke. Atlas bamboo grows in the territory of the Han and Tang dynasties, and mutated bamboo is hard to find in a million years. Since we have encountered it, let's keep it in the Han and Tang dynasties. 200 million. Some people stopped bidding. Since the Empress of the Han and Tang dynasties had spoken, they should give her face. Moreover, this bamboo was really not very useful. Lin Jun wanted to make the final decision at the critical moment, but he did not expect the Empress to speak first. At this moment, no one else was bidding, so he could only bite the bullet. 300 million. Suddenly, everyone looked at him. The value of this kind of currency in the primary star system was incomparable to the value of the special star system where Lin Jun was from. $1 here could be exchanged for 100 million. Lin Jun's wealth was incalculable. Although 300 million was not a lot, Lin Jun attracted people's attention since he dared to compete with the Empress. Bai Shaoshan glanced at Lin Jun. Brother, are you planning to use this opportunity to let the Empress take a look at you? I have to say, you did it. It is a good idea. Sure enough, the Empress and her daughter were looking over. Meeting the Empress' cat-like eyes, Lin Jun's face didn't turn red and his heart didn't skip a beat. This kind of small scene really couldn't have any effect on his well-tempered face. The little girl named Tao Tao suddenly covered her mouth and said to the Empress, Imperial Mother, this uncle is the person in the bathtub. Originally, the Empress wanted to investigate Lin Jun's background, but when she heard her daughter's words, she immediately became angry. She was the mother of the world, yet she had been seen naked by a lecher. It would have been fine if she couldn't find him, but since she had found him, how could she let him off so easily? 500 million. For the time being, it was not easy to investigate Lin Jun's background, so the Empress wanted to bid against Lin Jun. As the Empress, she naturally did not lack money. She even dared to compete for the National Protector Talisman on behalf of the country, which showed how much wealth she had. However, he didn't expect to meet Lin Jun, who didn't play by the rules. Lin Jun really didn't want to be long-winded with this Empress, so he simply shouted, 10 billion. The host, who wanted to give the Empress a few words of encouragement, choked on his words. Sir, how much did you say? Didn't you hear clearly? How about 100 billion then? This time, everyone present heard clearly. They were also dumbfounded. This peak world king couldn't be an idiot, right? Why would someone use 100 billion to buy this bamboo? Could it be that there was some secret to this bamboo? Some people felt that it was strange, but no one dared to try to bid against this person. Once he opened his mouth, it would be at least 100 billion. This was the Dimensional Universe Corporation's auction house. If one didn't have enough money in their account, they were not allowed to bid. Since the company didn't raise any questions, it proved that Lin Jun had the ability. The Empress, who wanted to teach Lin Jun a lesson, was speechless for a long time. She didn't care about this bamboo, but what worried her more was Lin Jun's identity. This person couldn't have been sent by some country to go against her, right? Fine, spend 100 billion to buy a bamboo medicine. Later, you won't have the ability to compete with me for the National Stabilizing Talisman. The Empress swallowed her anger. She thought that a lack of forbearance would spoil great plans. She would deal with this lecher later. Lin Jun successfully obtained the bamboo medicine. Although he had spent 100 billion, it didn't make much of a difference to someone as wealthy as him. Ignoring the envious, jealous, probing, and even malicious gazes from others, Lin Jun wanted to leave with the medicine. However, the auction house was closed at this time. Because the most important item was about to be auctioned, this place was blocked by an energy shield, and no one could enter or leave. Although Lin Jun could easily break through the shield and leave, he didn't want to complicate matters, so he decided to wait for a while longer. Soon, the auction for the last national stabilizing talisman began. Everyone who was prepared to bid for the national stabilizing talisman began to rub their fists, preparing for an intense fight in the last round. The golden talisman paper and the invisible power that could be felt clearly indicated that this talisman wasn't simple. Lin Jun glanced at it and almost laughed out loud. He thought it was some talisman, but it turned out to be a domain equipment that contained the power of a godly king. It was the weakest domain equipment, but it could easily cover an entire city. Although it was worthless in Lin Jun's eyes, on this planet where godly kings became kings, it was undoubtedly a top treasure. This thing could indeed protect a city and ensure that the city would never fall into enemy hands. Forget it. Let's just watch the show. Lin Jun narrowed his eyes, preparing to watch the show. Occasionally, the little girl called Tao Tao would turn around, and Lin Jun would smile at her. The little girl wasn't afraid of strangers, so she would smile at Lin Jun too. The interaction between the adult and child was quite good. The intense auction began. The Empress didn't participate in the bidding immediately. There were 3 countries bidding now. On this planet, only these 3 countries could compete with the Han and Tang empires: the Eastern Empire, the Southern Empire, and the Northern IC Empire. The starting bid for the National Stabilizing Talisman was 10 billion, and each bid had to be at least 1 billion. The 3 countries took turns bidding, and the price rose quickly. In just a short while, it had reached 80 billion. At this point, the Empress finally joined the bidding again. She had originally planned to bid 100 billion for the first time, but Lin Jun had bid 100 billion just now, and it didn't seem to have any weight now. Hence, she bid 110 billion. After bidding, she glared at Lin Jun. The Empress was indeed generous. Her bid of 30 billion caused the Han and Tang citizens to cheer. This also showed that the Han and Tang Empress were determined to get the National Stabilizing Talisman. At this moment, the representatives of the other 3 countries looked at each other with joy. Lin Jun was far away, but he could tell at a glance. Chapter 14:14. The bidding was still going on intensely. After the Empress made her bid, the price didn't stop at all and continued to rise. At this time, people also realized how terrifying it was when a country went all out. Lin Jun's initial 100 billion was nothing now. Although each bid was at least 1 billion, no one here increased by 1 billion. They were all increasing by 10 billion. 1,500, 1,800, 2,200. The price seemed to have been injected with chicken blood and quickly broke through 500 billion. Just like what Bai Shaoxing said, even the richest person on this planet couldn't afford this. Only a country could afford this. After the price passed 500 billion, the Empress's face became serious. Although she still had the ability to continue bidding, she had to be careful. These countries were also determined to fight to the death. 600 billion. Everyone was shocked when they raised the price by 100 billion. At the Dimensional Universe Corporation, everyone's account had to be checked. If they didn't have enough funds, they wouldn't be able to bid. The auction house would automatically stop you from raising the price to ensure fairness. The representative of the Northern Ocean Empire hesitated for a moment before raising the price to 650 billion. Immediately after, the Atlantic Empire raised the price to 700 billion. The people of Japan raised the price to 750 billion. This price was already very high. A country's annual revenue probably wouldn't exceed 300 billion. Everyone was going all out. At this time, everyone's eyes fell on the young Empress of Han Tang. Would a young girl be able to withstand the pressure and defeat her opponent at this time? The Empress looked at the competitors who were constantly provoking her and smiled. 1 trillion. The crowd was in an uproar. 1 trillion, that was such a huge amount of wealth. The spectators couldn't take it when she said it so casually, but the Empress acted as if nothing had happened. When the price of 1 trillion was announced, one country was silenced. That was the Northern Ocean Empire. They prepared less than 1 trillion. After defeating their first competitor, many people from Han Tang were very excited. However, the bidding continued. The people from the Atlantic Empire didn't look too good and raised the price by another 50 billion. The Empress immediately raised the price by another 500 billion to 1 trillion. At this time, the people from the Atlantic Empire were also silenced. This price also exceeded the upper limit of their funds. The people of the East Ocean Empire were considered wealthy. They went back and forth with the Empress a few more times, but in the end, they lost to the figure of 4 trillion. A faint smile appeared on the Empress's face. Looks like this auction is over. If no one else is bidding, then I'm going to collect the nation-protecting talisman. Just as the host was about to announce the end of the auction, the people from the Atlantic Empire suddenly stood up. It's not over yet. The Atlantic Empire is willing to transfer the funds in our account to the Eastern Empire so that they can continue fighting with the Han and Tang empires. That's right, our Northern IC Empire is the same. I have over 900 billion in my account, and I'm willing to help the Eastern Ocean Empire. There were people from the Universe Bank present, and the transfer began on the spot. The Empress, who had always been indifferent, finally changed her expression. She was very clear about how much money the Han and Tang empires had. They could easily defeat any country alone, but if the other 3 countries joined forces, their financial resources would definitely be above the Han and Tang empires. Was the nation-protecting talisman going to be snatched away by them, just like that? The Empress's heart was in a mess. At this moment, she knew that she had underestimated her opponents. The other party had probably planned this a long time ago. If the 3 of them joined forces to defeat the Han and Tang empires, the Han and Tang empires would no longer have the final assurance. When the Han and Tang empires were destroyed, they would be able to earn back all the money they had spent. Soon, the transfer was completed. The wealth of the 3 countries was gathered in the hands of the East Ocean representative. The East Ocean representative smiled at the Empress. Empress of the Han and Tang Empress, you don't have to worry about anything. Even if the Han and Tang empires lose and are destroyed, you will still be safe. Our emperor has long admired you, and when the time comes, he will definitely bring you into the palace. You will still be the Empress. The Empress's face turned cold. Stop dreaming. Hee hee. You can say that it's a dream now, but when the time comes, it won't be up to you. 5 trillion. The combined wealth of the 3 countries had already exceeded 3 trillion. This was all in cash, and it was not something that could be gathered in a short period of time. He was full of confidence. The Empress took a deep breath. 6 trillion. 7 trillion. 8 trillion. In the face of such a stubborn Empress, the East Ocean representative directly shouted out 2 trillion. This was because he had already investigated. The Han and Tang Empress's reserves were definitely not more than 5 trillion. At most, it was 23,000 to 23,000. This was almost their limit. Sure enough, the Empress of the Han and Tang Empress could not continue shouting. She was a little desperate. The other party had more than 3 trillion. How could she fight? Should she go and appeal to the people? It was simply too late. Perhaps there were some rich people present who could help her a little, but in this kind of national-level competition, the wealth of an ordinary person was simply a drop in the bucket. However, in a desperate situation, the Empress of the Han and Tang Empress could only look at the people present for help. She would raise as much as she could and try to delay as much time as possible. The first thing she saw was Lin Zhen's playful smile. This person was very rich, but would he help her? Was he from the Han and Tang Empress? The Empress was really embarrassed to ask Lin Zhen for help. After all, this person had just looked at her. Moreover, in her heart, Lin Zhen was probably here to cause trouble. How could she ask for help? She braced herself and held on. There were also people present who continuously transferred money to the Empress. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even tens of millions were transferred into his account, but it was all for naught. Who could make up for the difference of over 1 trillion? The representative of the East Ocean Empire laughed loudly. Empress of the Han and Tang Empress, don't struggle. Accept your fate. If you continue to stall like this, the Dimensional Universe Corporation will not allow it. The host of the Dimensional Universe Corporation also urged, if you don't raise the price, it will be taken as the Han and Tang Empress giving up. Wait for me a little longer. Give me a little more time. The Empress hurriedly pleaded. It was not easy to gather some money. Together with what she had left, The Empress shouted out a price of 1 trillion. This was her last ability. It was impossible for her to have any more. The representative of the East Ocean sneered. Just as he was about to give the Han and Tang Empress the final blow, a sudden voice rang out. So lively. Then I'll join the fun too. 3 trillion. Everyone's jaws dropped. They turned around and looked at the man who seemed to be causing trouble. Chapter 14:15. Everyone turned to look at the mysterious man. Bai Shaoxing was so shocked that he fell off his chair. This couldn't be a troublemaker. If one didn't have that much money, they wouldn't be able to call out such a high price. This person actually had 3 trillion, and it looked like it was effortless. Who was he? The Empress stared blankly at Lin Jun. Her heart was in a mess. This person, was he trying to help him? If that was the case, he would owe the other party a huge favor. If the other party made some unreasonable requests, what should he do? Although his realm wasn't high, when he casually said 3 trillion, it made the Empress's heart beat faster. The feeling of being saved in a desperate situation was the most fatal love flower for a woman. The Japanese representative was also stunned for a long time. He even asked around who this person was. But after asking around, no one knew Lin Jun's background. Kid, you better be careful when you call out a price. Although I don't know where your money came from, you're going against 3 countries at the same time. The consequences aren't something you can bear. Lin Jun smiled and raised his hand. If you're not convinced, please call out a price. The Japanese representative choked. He immediately asked someone to check Lin Jun's bank information. That was because one had to provide a bank account number to enter this auction. They soon found out, but the result was that he didn't have enough authority. Damn it, how could he not have enough authority? We used the country's name to check, even if he's in the divine realm. The staff was sweating. We really can't find anything. We can't even see the other party's authority level. It's beyond the scope of our investigation. The Japanese representative felt a chill in his heart. It seemed that the other party had a big background. It was impossible for him to win against such an unknown person. The other party said 3 trillion as easily as eating. He only had 3 trillion. How could he win? But the people from the Dimensional Universe Corporation were already urging him. He had no choice but to raise the price. In the end, he could only bite the bullet and say weakly, 3 trillion. At this moment, he felt that even if Lin Jun said 5 trillion or even 10 trillion, he would not be surprised. This was because the other party might not be from this planet, so it was normal for him to say such a sky-high price. Everyone, including the Empress of Han and Tang, turned their hopeful gazes to Lin Jun, wanting to see if this mysterious person could still do something mysterious and shocking. However, to everyone's surprise, Lin Jun's next words were, "All right, you win. I'm a few hundred yuan short." This sentence caused everyone to burst out laughing. The Japanese representative couldn't believe his ears. He stared at Lin Jun, dumbfounded. His eyes were filled with ecstasy. The Empress stood up excitedly and ran to Lin Jun while holding her beautiful dress. Her face was a little red because of her eagerness. "Sir, you can't. You already have 3 trillion, so you can definitely win. I still have 2 trillion. If I cooperate with you, I'll definitely be able to buy this talisman. Please save the people of Han and Tang." Lin Jun looked at the beautiful Empress in front of him and smiled. "It's a pity. I'm not related to you. We're not friends, and we don't have any special relationship. I can't cooperate with you." "You." The Empress's face was red. In her opinion, the meaning of Lin Jun's words was very clear. He wanted her to give her body. This would be considered a special relationship. Although this was very inappropriate and went against her morals, for the sake of the people of Han and Tang, she couldn't care less. "As long as Sir agrees, I'm willing to agree to any of Sir's requests." There seemed to be a lot of heartbreaking sound around. The Empress actually agreed to such a request. This kid was really lucky. However, doing such a thing would make the Emperor wear a green hat. This Empress could only die. Lin Jun touched his chin with his hand. "What a good Empress. I'll have to think about it carefully. I'll give you an answer later." The Empress was very anxious. She wanted to grab Lin Jun and make him agree immediately. Lin Jun suddenly smiled and said, "If I ruin their plans, will Her Majesty agree to any of my requests? Think about it carefully. My request might be too much. After all, I have many tricks up my sleeve. The Empress was so nervous that her heart almost jumped out of her chest. She was a little afraid of Lin Jun, but at this moment, she couldn't back down. She could only bite the bullet and nod. I'll agree to anything, as long as you hurry up. However, the Japanese representative saw hope. He even ran to the front of the stage and said to the host, "They're stalling for time. Hurry up and announce the end. Time's up." The host of the Dimensional Universe Corporation looked at the time. It was indeed time. Lin Jun didn't have any intention of bidding, so he chose to end it. 3 trillion going once, going twice, going thrice sold. The hammer fell to the ground. The country's stabilizing talisman was sold. The haunting Empress fell in front of Lin Jun and sobbed. Everything was too late. This person really didn't have good intentions. He was here to play with her. After taking advantage of her, he purposely gave her hope and made her lose face in front of others. In the end, he still didn't agree. After this matter was over, she could only kill herself to thank her people. Bai Shaosheng looked at Lin Jun angrily, as if he wanted to bite Lin Jun at any time. The representative of the East Ocean Empire happily ran over and took the nation's stabilizing talisman. This talisman was incomparably tough. None of their current methods could destroy it. As long as this talisman existed, the imperial city of any country could be said to be invincible. The Japanese representative came in front of the haunting Empress and Lin Jun and proudly raised the talisman. "Kid, although I don't know what you mean, I advise you to bring enough money before you come back. Haunting Empress, your only choice is to become the Japanese Empress. We'll meet again then, huh?" As they spoke, they hurriedly walked out, afraid that a long night would bring trouble. Just as they passed by Lin Jun seemed to have inadvertently raised a hand and used a finger to scratch the talisman. Rip! A sound that wasn't loud, but was extremely ear-piercing rang out. The talisman in the hands of the Japanese representative was torn apart. The entire place was silent. Everyone's eyes were focused on the talisman that the representative of the East Ocean Empire was holding. A talisman worth 3 trillion was destroyed just like that. This matter was a little too much for them to accept. Spending more money, squandering more. They had never seen such a prodigal before. After losing 3 trillion, what war potential did the three empires have? Chapter 14:16. At this time, everyone knew that this peak world king definitely had a great background. The indestructible nation protecting symbol had been torn apart like paper in his hands. This level of strength left even a divine transformation powerhouse in the dust. The haunting Empress looked at Lin Jun in a daze. His strength, wealth, and masculine face caused her heart to race. She couldn't help but agree to Lin Jun's request. But before she could speak, she was interrupted by Lin Jun. He was only passing by and saw the Han Tang Empire's situation, so he decided to help. He didn't want to provoke any more peach blossoms. I admire the Han Tang Empress' feelings for her country and her people. Since we've met today, this is fate. Let me give you a gift. As Lin Jun spoke, he took out something from the divine world. This was a bronze cauldron, a domain equipment. It was one of the spoils of war that Lin Jun had obtained from killing numerous sovereigns. Lin Jun had many such spoils of war. At the time, he had taken them all into the divine world and hadn't had time to look through them. Now that he looked through them, this was the worst one he had, and also the most suitable one. This item is 100 times stronger than the nation protecting symbol. If you place it in your imperial city, there will be a protective barrier for 500,000 kilometers around. It will protect your land and never allow anyone to invade. Take it. The Empress carefully took the bronze cauldron and held it in front of her chest like a treasure. Her twin peaks trembled, causing Lin Jun to take several more glances. Lin Jun looked at the little girl called Tao Tao. He faintly smiled and said, "This is for you." A small protective talisman appeared in front of Tao Tao's chest. This was a form of defensive equipment. Not only could it defend against the mental attacks of quasi-sovereigns, but it also automatically formed a protective barrier around her body. It could be said that it was difficult for anyone to injure her. After doing all of this, Lin Jun stood up and walked out of the auction house. Before leaving the auction house, the unreconciled representatives of the Eastern Ocean viciously said, "Sir, you've ruined our plans. Are you not going to leave your name behind?" Haha, I've already said it. Think about it yourselves. If you have the courage, I welcome you to take revenge at any time. After saying that, Lin Jun had already disappeared. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They had no idea when Lin Jun had announced his name. Only Tao Tao's focus was different from the others. She said to the Empress, "Imperial Mother, that uncle said he was Mr. Lin. Is his surname Lin?" The Empress was taken aback. "Lin, super powerful, rich, human. Ah, I know who he is." She was not the only one who knew about it. Almost everyone present knew about it. This person was Lin Jun. However, this was the endless sea of stars, and Lin Jun was a legendary figure. No one had thought of him for a while. Now that they thought of Lin Jun's appearance, who else could it be but him? For a moment, everyone was immersed in the ecstasy of seeing a legendary figure. As for the auction itself, not many people paid attention to it. On the way back, the Empress fell into deep thought. With the treasure Lin Jun had given her, she no longer had to worry about Han and Tang. However, her heart felt a little empty. She did not know if she would have the chance to see this person again in this life. At this point, she even felt a little regretful. If Lin Jun had really made some requests, perhaps it would have been better. Carrying the gene medicine of the mutated Atlas bamboo, Lin Jun had already left this planet. The storms here did not belong to him. He was just a passerby here. There were still relatives waiting for him at home. He could not stay anywhere for too long. The next time Lin Jun landed, he would land on an uninhabited, barren planet. This was a white dwarf that was about to die. The boiling heat waves prevented any life form from approaching it. However, for Lin Jun, this was just a place to rest, a quiet place to rest. He started to fuse with the level 8 life genes here. Fusing with level 8 life genes required the strength of a ruler. However, for Lin Jun, who had a godly power level of 100 million, this was not a problem. As long as he fused with this gene medicine, Lin Jun would no longer have to fear the power of a ruler's domain. He would be able to fight on equal footing. When that time came, he would not be a ruler. He would be stronger than one. Fusing with the gene medicine was a walk in the park. When he fused with it, a heavenly tribulation descended. Lin Jun did not care about this heavenly tribulation at all. This was because he had already grasped the power of primal chaos. He was almost immune to heavenly tribulations. After living through the 8th life, Lin Jun's new universe was a permitted existence. There was nothing fishy about the heavenly tribulation. The power of the universe's origin seemed to have forgotten about Lin Jun. Lin Jun easily passed through the heavenly tribulation that was neither painful nor itchy. After passing through the heavenly tribulation, the gene of the mutated Atlas bamboo appeared in Lin Jun's life genes. This type of bamboo was not as weak as wood-type life forms, nor was it as sharp as metal-type life forms. However, it had the power to break through all restraints. After fusing with Lin Jun's bloodline, he gained this extra power that specialized in breaking through all domain suppression. This is great. With this power, any ruler who wants to use their domain power or domain equipment to suppress me will not be able to do so. This way, my combat strength will increase imperceptibly. Lin Jun raised his hand and saw a trace of green in his palm. This was the power of the Atlas bamboo. This power was actually somewhat compatible with Lin Jun's chaotic green lotus. Although the Atlas bamboo was not as miraculous as the chaotic green lotus, they were still plants. The two powers had many similarities. In particular, when Lin Jun's dimensional power landed on the Atlas bamboo's green aura, it did not repel each other. This power, when combined with my own dimensional power, seems to be able to travel through time and space. At this moment, Lin Jun realized that the Atlas bamboo had such a function. This discovery made Lin Jun extremely excited. Although it might take a long time to master this power, this move would become his trump card in the future. This was the first time he had grasped this power, so Lin Jun felt a little uncomfortable. With a thought, the Atlas bamboo's green aura broke out of his body and turned into a purple bamboo staff. This was the shape of the mutated Atlas bamboo before it was condensed into a medicine. Now, with the cooperation of Lin Jun's dimensional power, although it did not have the destructive power of a supreme equipment, its toughness was not weak at all. This was the special characteristic of the Atlas bamboo. Go. Let's see where you can travel to. Lin Jun raised his hand, and his divine will control the Atlas bamboo to fly into the air. It turned into a green light and transcended the boundaries of time and space, disappearing into the distance. The next moment, the Atlas bamboo appeared in a place filled with birds and flowers. Chapter 14:17. Lin Jun never imagined that Optimus Bamboo's first test flight would lead him to the Radiant God's Kingdom of Light. The Radiant God's Kingdom was a world created by the Radiant God. If the Radiant God died, the world would quickly collapse. The people living in the Radiant God's world might survive if they had the ability to flee, but if they didn't, they would die. They lived carefree lives under the Radiant God's protection, but they would die because of the Radiant God's defeat. That was their fate. Lin Jun had just tossed out Optimus Bamboo for a test flight. He hadn't thought about where it would go, but he didn't expect it to end up here. This could only be said to be fate. Optimus Bamboo's appearance wasn't spectacular or eye-catching. It just silently penetrated the barrier between the Radiant God's kingdom and the outside world and quietly arrived. Moreover, this bamboo was mysterious. It was like Lin Jun's eyes, as if he himself had arrived here. Controlling Optimus Bamboo, he quietly hid it above the clouds of the Radiant God's kingdom and slowly flew forward, like a surveillance camera. Everything on the ground of the Radiant God's kingdom was easily within his sight. According to what Lin Jun knew, the Radiant God's kingdom was known as a paradise. The Radiant God proclaimed that after worshiping him, they would have the opportunity to enter the Radiant God's kingdom of light and enjoy bliss. There was no sickness or suffering here, no disaster or death. Angels sang and skylarks flew. It was a huge garden empire. The Radiant God's believers all yearned for this paradise, so they became more and more devout in their faith. But now, what Lin Jun saw was a bit different. The Radiant God's kingdom of light was covered with a layer of gray mist. Everyone's face was filled with worry. This was because their king, their supreme Radiant God, had been injured. The Radiant God was surrounded by a baleful aura of death and was in the midst of emergency treatment. If the Radiant God died, the Radiant God's kingdom would cease to exist. Lin Jun controlled Optimus Bamboo and quietly flew towards the Radiant God's palace in the depths of the Radiant God's kingdom. The palace was tall and incomparably sacred. There were also palaces of holy angels on the left and right of the door. Usually, if one wanted to see the Radiant God, they would have to pass through them. But now, these two palaces were empty. The holy angels were at Starfall Lake. Under the concealment of dimensional power, Atlas Bamboo silently sneaked into the Radiant Shrine. After passing through many intricately carved corridors, they arrived at the depths of the temple. This was the Chief Sovereign of Light's room. Two pseudo-chief sovereigns were standing guard in front of the door. Lin Jun's sky-propping bamboo's dimensional force operated and silently entered the room. The walls didn't obstruct space at all. This room was filled with powerful radiant energy. The Radiant Sovereign was currently using radiant energy to expel the innate baleful, deathly aura. When he was fighting with Lin Jun, he had only been slightly affected, but the result was that he was in such a passive state. If he wasn't proficient in the power of light, he probably wouldn't have survived. However, the banishment was not over yet. It was not even halfway done yet. He did not notice Lin Jun's arrival. Lin Jun watched from midair, wondering if he should use sky-lifting bamboo to give the Radiant Ruler another blow. However, the sky-raising bamboo was not an ultimate equipment, so it might not be able to kill him from such a distance. Besides, Lin Jun had a feeling that something was going to happen. After waiting patiently for a while, the Radiant Sovereign finished his round of cultivation. Help me again. This innate, baleful, deathly aura is difficult to expel. I'm having a hard time doing it myself. Lin Jun was stunned. He wondered who the Radiant Sovereign was talking to. He was certain that he wasn't talking to him. However, there was no one else in the room. When he looked closely, Lin Jun saw a small water mirror in the light. The water mirror was so small that it was almost unnoticeable. The image in the mirror was blurry, and he could not see who it was. Under the strong light, it was even harder to tell who it was. The radiant sovereign looked at the water mirror. A mocking smile appeared on his lips. Do you have to do this? There's only you and me here. So who are you trying to hide for? A hoarse voice came from the water mirror. You've done badly this time. Not only did you fail, but you've also exposed the fact that I'm an ultimate equipment. If I hadn't hidden myself well, I'm afraid someone would have discovered who I am. You should be fine with me here, right? There's no harm in being careful. Remember, a sovereign's methods are ever-changing. It's always right to be careful. Fine. Your identity is a mystery. You don't have to show yourself, but what about my injuries? Take your time to heal your injuries. If I interfere, it'll arouse even more suspicion. The radiant sovereign's expression turned ugly. You can't do this and you can't do that. Tell me, how can you help me? This time, that Lin Jun caused me so much trouble, but I didn't see you come to my rescue. Oomph. If it weren't for the fact that I lent you my ultimate equipment, do you think you'd be alive today? The person in the water mirror was clearly angry. The radiant sovereign immediately wilted. No one could have predicted Lin Jun's growth. We'll definitely meet again in the future. The most important thing for you is to stay alive. Don't worry about anything else. Fine. However, if I don't kill Lin Jun, I won't be able to get rid of the hatred in my heart. However, there are many people in this world who can deal with Lin Jun. You have to find a time to act. Understand. Don't forget our agreement. All right, Myth Boss. When he heard this, Lin Jun was stunned. Myth Boss. In this universe, the only person who could make the Radiant Sovereign address him as such was the first sovereign, the Myth Sovereign of Jiangnan. Could the person in the water mirror be from Jiangnan? Lin Jun had his suspicions. However, when he saw that the Radiant Sovereign was about to put away the water mirror and disappear, Lin Jun immediately controlled the sky-raising bamboo and struck the back of the Radiant Sovereign's head. The Radiant Sovereign had never dreamed that he would be attacked in his own bedroom. Caught off guard, he was struck off the bed by Lin Jun's bamboo. The back of his head was smashed open. Although this strike wasn't enough to kill the Radiant Sovereign, it was enough to keep him in bed for a while longer. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Jun approached the water mirror. The person in the water mirror shook his sleeve, covering his face so that Lin Jun couldn't see him clearly. Then the water mirror vanished. Lin Jun felt slightly regretful. He had been so close that he couldn't see the person's face clearly. However, the Radiant Sovereign had said that this person was a myth sovereign. It seemed that he would have to be more careful in the future. Those who had the confidence to take care of him were probably only those who had reached the peak of the sovereign realm. The myth sovereign, the lonely star fisherman, and the fallen star sovereign. The other two had some ties with him. Only the myth sovereign was the most suspicious. Lin Jun had wanted to use the sky-raising bamboo to hit the Radiant Sovereign a few more times. However, such attacks that transcended time and space consumed a lot of god power. Lin Jun couldn't hold on any longer and could only retreat helplessly. When he opened his eyes, Lin Jun was already back on the white short star he was on. Fortunately, I didn't come here in vain. To think that I'd see something like this. Chapter 14:18. The stalemate at Fallen Star Lake finally changed. Originally, Hei-Tu and Steam Bun were enough to suppress the divine angels and let Fallen Star Lake rest easy. But on this day, in the sky above the Fallen Star Lake battlefield, a black thread silently arrived, and it actually caused a hole in the sky. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and a fiendish aura surged out from the hole in the sky. The entire Fallen Star Lake was plunged into darkness. In the darkness, pairs of eyes were like lanterns, making people feel intimidated. The others didn't know what was happening, but Hei-Tu and Steam Bun knew what it meant. Beast King Prison. Someone opened a passage between Fallen Star Lake and Beast King Prison. Who did this? Hearing these words, everyone fell into a panic. Of the 3 forbidden zones of the universe, the most terrifying was Beast King Prison. because there were Dominator-level monsters running rampant, not to mention ordinary warriors. Even Dominator-level experts often fell there. Every warrior who became a Dominator had to go to Beast King prison to gain experience. Only those who came out alive could be considered true Dominators. But they didn't expect someone to be able to open a passage between Beast King prison and Fallen Star Lake. Who was this person? He was actually so tyrannical. And if the passage to Beast King prison couldn't be controlled, vicious beasts would run rampant in the human world. That would be a disaster. This person's methods were truly vicious. When the two divine angels saw this, they laughed loudly. Hey two, Steam Bun, you two are Lin Jin's lackeys. Now that Beast King prison is directly connected to Fallen Star Lake, countless monsters are about to flood this place. Let's see how you people will stop them. The two divine angels wave their hands. Let's retreat and watch the destruction of Fallen Star Lake from afar. Then we'll clean up the battlefield. The army attacking Fallen Star Lake began to retreat, but they didn't go far. They only retreated a few hundred kilometers and still surrounded Fallen Star Lake from afar. They decided to sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight, waiting for Fallen Star Lake to collapse. Hey 2 and Steam Bun didn't pursue because monsters had already appeared from the hole in the sky. Madams, the two of us are responsible for blocking the Dominator-level monsters. You have to do your best to ensure that Fallen Star Island doesn't fall to the monsters. Hey 2 roared and charged forward with Steam Bun. Among the monsters that appeared were a golden flower python and a dragon. They were both Dominator-level monsters. The others couldn't stop them. An intense battle broke out in the Meteor Lake as a steady stream of ferocious beasts began to pour in. Hey 2 and Steam Bun were tangled up with the ruler demon beast. It would take a while for a victor to be decided, so the battle seemed a bit dull. On the other hand, the female generals of the Lin family were performing very well. After so many years of battle training, everyone had improved a lot, and Ning, Su Mingyue, and the others had already become divine kings. Ning Qingxian had reached the pseudo-dominator realm, while Snow White and the Bai Su sisters were experts amongst the pseudo-dominator realm. As for Feng Qingluan, she had completed nirvana, and her strength was even above the Bai sisters. Even Mei Lin had become a divine king, surpassing her two brothers. The sisters Linger and Angel were also at the quasi-god king level. Their performance on the battlefield was outstanding. The female generals of the Lin family took the field one after another. For a time, they even restrained the wild attacks of the ferocious beasts and protected the Picking Stars Island from being lost. However, this situation didn't last for long. In the sky, the thread continued to stir furiously, sweeping up the clouds. More and more holes appeared, and more ferocious beasts began to pour out. Another golden tiger appeared. It was also at the ruler level. At this time, the battle at Meteor Lake took a turn for the worse. Feng Qingluan could only go up and fight against the ruler-level tiger. She was one of the best among the pseudo-dominators, but she wasn't at Lin Jin's level. Against a ruler, it was still difficult. Even if the Bai sisters came to help, they were still at an absolute disadvantage. The thread in the sky didn't seem satisfied. It continued to stir, and another barbarian bull ruler appeared. The fourth ruler-level ferocious beast. When the barbarian bull charged out with an unstoppable momentum, the people fell into despair. How could they stop so many ruler-level ferocious beasts? The Picking Stars Island was about to fall. In the distance, the Holy Angel grew excited. Everyone, get ready. Once the Picking Stars Island falls, it will be time for us to beat them up. We definitely won't give the Lin family any chance. It seemed that the 1,000-year battle at Meteor Lake was finally coming to an end. The person who would end this battle wasn't the Holy Angel, nor was it the Beast King Hell's ruler-level ferocious beasts. Rather, it was the person controlling the thread in the sky. He was the main culprit, the true mastermind behind the scenes. However, no one knew who he was. Even if the Black Bumpkin and the others tried their best to stop the barbarian bull, he would still release other ruler-level ferocious beasts. There was no way they could win. Just as everyone was in despair, the sound of a zither exploded in the sky. Clang, 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 clang. The zither's rapid vibrations were like rain hitting a banana leaf. Finally, the zither sound transformed into spring thunder and exploded in the sky. The target of the explosion was the thread controlling everything. The earth shook and the mountains shook. The thread trembled in the air, and the person controlling it let out a cry of alarm. "Ah, not good." A beautiful figure appeared in the sky. She had a sword on her back and a zither on her back. Her features were picturesque. "You, Sunflower Scar. Junior, how dare you ruin my plans?" The voice reverberated in the sky, but no one could tell who it was. The person who had come was the new special ruler-level expert, Sunflower Scar. Just like the Black Bumpkin and the Black Bumpkin, she had finally completed her training as a ruler in return from the Beast King Hell. Sunflower Scar looked at the floating thread in the sky. "Who are you? Why did you attack Lin Jun? You don't need to know who I am. Don't be too pleased with yourself, just because you ruined my plans. Without the guidance of my thread, although the sky curtain is about to close, I can still sense the aura of the human world. Powerful ruler-level demonic beasts will definitely descend from the Beast King Hell. Let's see how you deal with them then. When the time comes, the human world will be plunged into misery and suffering. Don't blame me for this." The thread transformed into a streak of light and shot through the sky. Even Sunflower Scar couldn't stop the thread from leaving. There was no chance for her to react. The sky curtain in the sky, having lost the guidance of the thread, quickly began to close. However, an even more powerful, fiendish aura howled out from within. Right now, there are already 4 ruler-level demonic beasts in Fallen Star Lake. This was enough to make people panic. However, when this aura appeared, the 4 ruler-level vicious beasts actually retreated, trembling in fear. Sunflower Scar, who had just arrived, didn't expect this to happen. However, she had just returned from the Beast King Hell, so she wasn't unfamiliar with this aura. Not good. It's actually a Beast King. A perfect ruler-level demonic beast is coming. Sunflower Scar immediately flew to the sky above Picking Star Island. She waved her hand and called the Black Bumpkin and the Black Bumpkin over. Her expression was grave, as if she was facing a great enemy. Chapter 1419. Sovereign-level beasts were enough to give people a headache. Perfect sovereign-level beasts were almost unimaginable. Even in the entire Beast King prison, there were only a few perfect sovereign-level beasts. This level corresponded to perfect sovereigns. In the entire universe, there were only 3 of them. Even if Lonely Star Fisherman or Fallen Star Ruler wanted to help, it would be too late. Sunflower Scar stood in front of the group, holding her zither, ready to fight at any time. Sunflower Scar was definitely in the top 10 of the universe, but at this moment, her hands were trembling slightly. It was because she was strong that she knew how terrifying perfect sovereign-level beasts were. Sister-in-law, sister-in-law. Hey Two and Steamed Bun greeted her. They had stayed in Fantasy Town and knew Sunflower Scar. Sunflower Scar glanced at them and nodded slightly. These 2 were Lin Jun's brothers. "This is..." An Ning spoke first. Among the crowd, Ning was the first to ask. After all, she was Lin Jun's first love. Although her strength was not outstanding among these women, and her appearance was not outstanding, everyone respected her. Sunflower Scar looked back at the beautiful women behind her and smiled faintly. "Hello, sisters. Although I have not officially married Lin Jun, I have already decided on him. I am a member of the Lin family in life, and in death, I am also a member of the Lin family. My name is Sunflower Scar." And Ning and the others' hearts tightened. As expected, their husband was a sentimental person. Although he was not to the point of being promiscuous, he would not let go of an outstanding woman who was fated with him. However, they could accept that Lin Jun was an expert who had dominated the universe for 10,000 years. It was insignificant for him to have less than 10 wives. Not to mention Lin Jun. Even the emperor of a universe country with a beginner civilization would have thousands of wives that he could not remember. It was too normal. Fortunately, Sunflower Scar was a phoenix among men and a powerful sovereign. She would not bring shame to the Lin family. Now is not the time to talk about this. Everyone's attention was quickly placed on the sky. Just as the sky was about to disappear, a series of strange laughter came from within. This sound was very strange. It should be a human's laughter, but it didn't sound like a human's laughter. It could be said that it was a combination of roaring, arrogance, and a voice that sounded like a broken gong. Ha ha! How long had he been in that damn place? Today, I finally have the chance to come out and take a breather. Just as the sky was about to close, a slender body was forcefully squeezed out. Its entire body was pitch black, like an incomparably huge loach. Or lizards. It also looked like the flood dragon race, but it was also clearly different. It was a creature that had never been seen before. His body was covered with scales, and 2 pairs of wings protruded from his ribs. They had been folded back when he had come out, but now that he was here, they were unfurled, covering the entire sky. The 4 claws were sharp, and a strange golden light flickered on them. No one doubted the power of these claws. It had a big mouth with fangs and a long tongue sticking out. It looked a little like a dog. The people present, including Sunflower Scar, didn't recognize it, but this didn't hinder the strength of this thing. Only Hey too glanced at it and said hesitantly, "This is bad, sisters-in-law. When I was in the Beast King prison, I heard that there was a dragon bone mountain in the Beast King prison. It was the final resting place of the super dragon race in the universe after they died. The Dragon Bone Mountain gathered the essence of all the dragon race in the world and was nurtured by the dark matter of the universe. After a long time, it formed a kind of strange dragon. It might be this guy in front of us." Sunflower Scar was surprised. "You mean this is a dragon? It doesn't look like it." "Sisters-in-law, you don't know. The essence of the dragon race includes not only flood dragons, divine dragons, demonic dragons, and so on, but also many earth dragons. Strictly speaking, this guy is part of the dragon race, but it doesn't belong to any kind of dragon race. It has gathered the excellent genes of all the dragon race in the world and has all the abilities of the dragon race. But because there are many earth dragon genes, this guy must be a dragon. It's just that there is no precedent, so it doesn't have a name. Some people in the Beast King prison call it the Strange Dragon, which is a strange-looking dragon." At this time, Mayor Lin, who was standing behind Su Mingwe, said, "I think it looks like a huge flying mastiff. It should be called a dragon mastiff." Several people nodded slightly. It was a bit appropriate. The appearance of the strange dragon shocked the world. The 4 sovereign demon beasts knelt down. Just as they were showing off, they heard the Lin family's discussion. The strange dragon's huge eyes glared. "What nonsense are you women talking about? I am the Lord of Dragons. What dragon mastiff? Ridiculous." The strange dragon flapped its wings and circled twice in the air, as if it was enjoying the fresh air of the primordial realm. "TSK, TSK. It is indeed a wonderful place. I like everything here. Now, I declare that everything in this world belongs to me. Everyone is my slave. The 4 of you." The strange dragon raised a claw and pointed at the python, the golden dragon, the tiger, and the bull. "The 4 of you are my subordinates, under my direct command. As for you," it then pointed at the women of the Lin family. "You women are really the best. Although we are not of the same race, this king's aesthetic is still relatively close to that of the human race. In the future, you will be this king's maids. As for you," the strange dragon pointed at the people besieging the Fallen Star Lake. "You are all slaves. Food. The 2 birdmen with wings, the 2 of you, the black kid over there, and that person from the planet, the 4 of you will be my guards." Almost in the blink of an eye, the strange dragon had arranged everything. "That's about it. I just lack a general to conquer the world for me. There isn't anyone suitable here. This girl's strength is about the same, but she is too beautiful. Not suitable, not suitable. From today onwards, you will follow me to conquer this world. My will is supreme. No one can go against it." Almost everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at this strange dragon. This strange dragon was definitely not a good person. However, it seemed to be a little talkative and did not seem to be in good spirits. Before the others could say anything, the holy angel could not hold it in any longer. The holy angel followed the light sovereign. He was one of the universe sovereigns, the noblest of them all. In addition, he was a sovereign himself. He was proud and arrogant, and he never took others seriously. This dragon's nagging made him very unhappy. It actually assigned him a guard. What a joke. The corner of the holy angel's mouth curled, and he let out a cold laugh. Where did this idiot come from? Before he could finish his sentence, the strange dragon had already charged in front of him. Claws flashing with cold light split open and tore the holy angel apart. A dignified ruler could not even block a single move. The godly infant left his body. The strange dragon spat out a mouthful of dragon flames, turning the holy angel's godly infant into ashes. The ruler's godly crystal rose into the air and disappeared into space. Only then did the strange dragon turn his head. Opening his mouth, he placed the holy angel's broken body into his mouth and chewed. Fresh blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, making his honest face look even more ferocious. Chapter 14:20. Killing a sovereign with a single move. The moment the mystical dragon appeared, it was so powerful that it struck despair into everyone. No wonder the mysterious person said that if a sovereign beast appeared, it would be none of his business. The difference between a perfected sovereign and an ordinary sovereign was so huge. The angel of God trembled. Seeing her brother killed, she did not dare to move. Sunflower Scar's expression was serious. She knew that, with her strength, she was no match for a perfected sovereign. However, she could not retreat. She could only fight with all her might. Just as everyone was preparing to fight to the death, the space in front of them suddenly rippled. A light circle flashed a few times in the space, and a figure appeared. His beard was unkempt, his hair was messy, and his clothes were tattered. At first glance, he looked like a beggar. However, the women cheered at the same time. "Hubby, hubby, this bastard. I knew you weren't dead." A fragrant wind blew. Mayor Lin was the first to pounce. Like a swallow, she dove into Lin Jun's arms. "Daddy, woo-woo." Lin Jun was travel-worn. He had almost crossed the endless sea of stars and returned to Fallen Star Lake. When he saw his family, his heart was overflowing with joy. At this moment, he knew that he was wrong. Back then, for the sake of cultivation, he had forcefully suppressed his longing for his family. He was cold-blooded and heartless. However, after so many years, the feelings in his heart could not be suppressed. Cultivation and Goof family did not conflict. If he liked them, he liked them. There was no need to control it. He reached out and stroked his daughter's hair. "Good girl. Daddy promised to come back for your wedding. I'm not late, right?" No. It's still 100 years too early." Lin Jun brought Mayor over to meet his wives. Sunflower Scar, the proud little girl, looked at him with red eyes. She had thought that Lin Jun was dead. Sunflower Scar had been determined to avenge Lin Jun for so many years. She had been cultivating diligently, but the sorrow in her heart was indescribable. Now that she saw Lin Jun, she held back her tears. Lin Jun gave her a big hug and then hugged Feng Qingwan, Ning Qingxian, Snow White, and Bai Su one by one. Finally, there was Su Mingyue and Ning, his first two wives, who had been waiting for him for thousands of years. "You've all worked hard. Now that I'm back, don't worry. Your husband is a cockroach. He won't die." The women, who had never cried in the thousands of years of battle, were now crying their eyes out. Lin Ping and Lin and also came to their father with faces full of shame and asked for forgiveness. After all, this matter was caused by the descendants of the Lin family. They also had a lot of responsibility. Lin Jun patted their shoulders. "Don't worry too much. After all, I was the one who caused this. I can't put all the blame on you." While Lin Jun was busy comforting her, Qi Long couldn't take it anymore. "What are you doing? How dare you take advantage of this king's maidservant? Do you want to die?" Lin Jun turned around and looked at the powerful beast in front of him. It was indeed very strong. It was even stronger than the sovereigns that Lin Jun had fought before. But no matter how strong it was, Lin Jun had to deal with it. With a raise of his hand, the lotus flower spear appeared in Lin Jun's hand. Qi Long, who had always been carefree, couldn't help but take 2 steps back when he saw the lotus flower spear. "Supreme equipment. You actually have a supreme equipment. Who are you? Why have this king never seen you in the Beast King prison? You're not a sovereign. How is that possible? Is there someone in this world who's more talented than this king? Lin Jin sneered. There are too many things you don't know. Since you've come to Fallen Star Lake, don't think about leaving safely. Prepare to stay here. Just be my pet watchdog. Qilong was furious. Stupid and ignorant person, don't think that you can beat me with the supreme equipment. Die. With a flap of his wings, Qilong pounced. Lin Jun raised his lotus flower spear and attacked with sevenfold stacks. Man and dragon collided. Lin Jun was forced to retreat continuously. This Qilong was very strong. Even with sevenfold stacks, he was no match for it. However, Lin Jun's move was merely an experiment. He wanted to see how powerful a beast that had reached the peak sovereign level was. After testing it, Lin Jun knew that he couldn't beat it. When Qilong pounced again, Lin Jun used his best skill. Divine Baleful Destruction Thunder. 3 consecutive bolts. Even though Qilong was strong, he still couldn't block Lin Jun's attack. After being hit by the 3 bolts of lightning, Qilong was blasted down from the sky. The divine Baleful Death Qi lingered, but it didn't take Qilong's life. This guy had an incomparably strong life force. It could actually resist the divine Baleful Death Qi. Although it was injured, it wasn't fatal. As long as it was injured, it was enough. Lin Jun didn't expect 3 bolts of lightning to kill a sovereign beast. He teleported on a Qilong's back and stabbed down with his lotus flower spear. Dimensional combined attack. 2 spatial powers collided. Lin Jun's spear broke through Qilong's scales. A piece of scale almost fell off. Lin Jun's arms were also completely numb from the rebound. Damn it, this guy's defense is simply abnormal. Lin Jun's supreme equipment and sovereign beast skill not only couldn't pierce through Qilong's body, but even a piece of scale didn't fall off. Lin Jun knew that he couldn't beat it. He had used his trump card right from the start, catching Qilong off guard. However, he still couldn't kill it. As long as Qilong could catch his breath, Qilong would definitely counterattack. At that time, everyone would be finished. Lin Jun definitely didn't want to see that happen. He simply raised his hand, and 10,000 Feet Mountain appeared. 10,000 Feet Mountain was Lin Jun's only remaining domain equipment after the battle at Fantasy Town. Because it was too big, it wasn't very useful in battle. Therefore, it was preserved. 10,000 Feet Mountain was a super domain equipment, the best of the best. Its weight was comparable to several galaxies. Before it could completely crush Qilong, the entire star-picking island couldn't withstand the pressure and showed signs of collapse. Qilong was even more shocked. He originally wanted to catch his breath and counterattack. He didn't expect this brat to have such a strange item. Damn it, don't think your domain can suppress this king. This mountain won't fall. Qilong's body shook violently. A powerful dragon, Might Domain, appeared. The domains collided. Lin Jun's domain was about to collapse. After all, his domain wasn't a sovereign domain. It couldn't contend against Qilong's sovereign beast skill. However, Lin Jun was already prepared. He raised his hand, and the sky-raising bamboo attacked. Jade light shot up into the sky and broke through the dome of heaven. Qilong's dragon, Might Domain, was like a huge balloon that had been punctured. It quickly deflated and collapsed. Wah! This is impossible. Qilong felt that he was extremely unlucky. This brat clearly wasn't his match. However, he attacked decisively and viciously, catching him off guard. Then there was this extremely heavy mountain pressing down on him. Qilong's domain, which he clearly had the upper hand, was broken. If he was suppressed by this mountain, Qilong wouldn't be able to escape. He came here to show off, not to be trapped. Brat, I'll remember you. We'll meet again. Chapter 1421. Seeing that the strange dragon was about to escape, Lin Jun let out a sigh of relief. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to completely deal with the strange dragon. Chasing it away was the best result. However, Lin Jun had always been one to take advantage of opportunities. Since it was determined to escape, then he would give it another chance. Seeing the mountain fall, Lin Jun brandished the lotus spear in his hand and once again ruthlessly struck the wound on the strange dragon's back. The spear pierced in. Lin Jun twisted his hands like a lever, pressing and lifting. Want to leave? Leave something behind first. The strange dragon screamed miserably. A black dragon scale was pried off by Lin Jun. The strange dragon had never suffered such a great loss in its life. As a dragon that loved beauty, having a dragon scale dug out was simply a great humiliation. But at this moment, the 10,000-foot mountain was approaching. If it didn't run now, it would be too late. The strange dragon had no choice but to fiercely glare at Lin Jun. Then its body twisted, and before the 10,000-foot mountain pressed down, it broke through space and left. The sky opened again, and the strange dragon directly fled. Although it couldn't directly come here from the Beast King prison, it had a way to return because that was its home. The strange dragon fled. Lin Jun only had one dragon scale left in his hand. It was 1 meter in diameter and oval in shape. Lin Jun's attacks only left some scratches on it. In the end, he had to stab through the gaps in the dragon scale to pry it off. If he didn't have a supreme weapon, he wouldn't have even thought about it. Even if he had a top-grade weapon, he wouldn't be able to harm the dragon scale in the slightest. Putting away the dragon scale, Lin Jun looked at the people surrounding Fallen Star Lake. There were 4 ruler-level demon beasts here, as well as an angel of God. There were also the monarch races from the endless sea of stars. They brought those demons and ghosts. Although they had been doing nothing in the later stages of the battle, they also wanted to kill the Lin family at every moment. There were also people from the other 3 holy lands who wanted to destroy Fallen Star Lake. There were also some random people from the primordial realm. Lin Jun knew some of them as he had a grudge with them in the past. There were also some that he did not know. There were tens of billions of enemies here, but when Lin Jun's gaze swept over them, these people seemed to feel that he was looking at them. They didn't dare to look directly at Lin Jun. A person's name was like a tree's shadow. Just the name Lin Jun was enough to make people's souls tremble. What's more, Lin Jun had just forced a perfect sovereign-level demonic beast to flee. What could these people possibly use to contend against him? However, no one dared to act rashly. No one dared to attack, and no one dared to run. They just stood there in a daze. Lin Jun carried the lotus flower spear and slowly walked through the battlefield. For the past 1,000 years, you guys have been really impressive. The original intention of people who practice martial arts is to strengthen their bodies and live forever. It is also to protect themselves. However, there's a rule in martial arts, which is that you shouldn't implicate your family. Whether or not you have a grudge against me, you shouldn't seek revenge on my family. Since you're determined to cause trouble for my Lin family, you should have the courage to bear the consequences of failure. Are you ready? After he finished speaking, Lin Jun pointed his lotus flower spear at the 4 sovereign-level demonic beasts. The few of you, do you want to live or die? If you want to die, I'll send you to your deaths first. If you don't want to die, you'd better listen to me obediently and stop anyone who tries to escape. Dragon, tiger, python, and bull. Although these 4 demonic beasts had yet to fully awaken their intelligence, they could still differentiate between the strong and the weak. In their eyes, the Wonder Dragon was the most powerful being. Yet, this person had forced it to flee. How would they dare to resist? Moreover, they could sense the aura of a beast on Lin Jun. It was also the aura of a king. It was the aura of a black hole beast. The law of the jungle was the law of the jungle. The strong preyed on the weak. They understood this the best. No one wanted to die. Beasts were the same. Even ants wanted to live. Thus, the 4 demonic beasts immediately chose to obey. They immediately joined Lin Jun's group without hesitation. After all, these people who were attacking Fallen Star Lake weren't their allies. The 4 sovereign-level beasts immediately spread out. According to Lin Jun's orders, they were prepared to intercept anyone who tried to escape. The 4 sovereign-level beast bodies rapidly expanded. Each of them was hundreds of kilometers long. Combined with their sovereign domains, they blocked off the surrounding space. The 10 billion army that was attacking Fallen Star Lake was concentrated in an area of 10,000 kilometers around Picking Stars Island. They were now surrounded. Lin Jun turned around and said to Sunflower Scar and the others, "Protect Picking Stars Island." "Can you do it?" Steamed Bun finally got a chance to speak. "Big Brother Lin, don't worry. As long as a sovereign doesn't attack, I can protect Picking Stars Island by myself." After saying that, steamed Bun's body shook and turned into a small planet, covering the entire star-picking island. A small planet covering an island gave Lin Jun plenty of space to fight. Steam Bun's planet was a bit deformed. It was shaped like a pot lid. It was completely airtight. Lin Jun was stunned. Steamed Bun's sovereign ability was really special. He could even change the shape of a planet. Without any worries, Lin Jun was relieved. This time, he could do whatever he wanted. At this time, it was the subjugation army's turn to be on edge. As the only ruler, the angel of God mustered up his courage and said to Lin Jun, as the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. Revenge breeds revenge. If you let us all go, how about we write off everything that happened today? I promise I won't cause trouble for Fallen Star Lake again. Lin Jun laughed and shook his head. He firmly replied, in your dreams. Angel of God's expression changed. We have so many people here. You can't kill us all even if you want to. Even with the help of the 4 great beasts, most of us can still escape. Why you have to kill us all? Aren't you afraid of revenge in the future? Lin Jun approached with his lotus flower spear. Stop talking nonsense. The best way is to eliminate you all. As for revenge, the sovereign is dead. Who would dare to come for revenge? Seeing that he couldn't persuade, Angel of God turned hostile. Everyone, Lin Jun doesn't want to let us go. Then there's no need to say anything. Everyone, do your best. If you want to go back alive, fight with your life on the line. These people saw that they had no choice but to be riled up by Angel of God. The spaceships all charged up and aimed their main cannons at Lin Jun. They couldn't surrender without firing a shot. In an instant, countless lights flashed in the sky. Facing Lin Jun alone, more than 1 million spaceships wanted to fire. There were more than 2 billion enemies in the sky. Lin Jun held his lotus flower spear. He knew that after this battle, Fallen Star Lake would be completely safe in the entire primordial realm. Only by resolving his worries could Lin Jun move forward boldly and not be held back. So this time, he wouldn't be merciful. Do you want to go crazy one last time? Unfortunately, you won't have a chance. Chapter 14:22. Lin Jun's combined dimensional strike had already reached a stage where he could use it as he pleased after much research and improvement. Right now, the area within 1,000 kilometers in front of him was Lin Jun's combined dimensional strike's range. Facing these people who wanted to destroy his home, Lin Jun didn't show any mercy. Attack. Annihilation. It wasn't an explosion, nor was it destruction. It was dimensional devouring. More than 2 billion people were directly within the range of Lin Jun's combined dimensional strike. With one attack, they were sent into a spatial crack. The whistling spatial turbulence instantly swallowed them up. The entire sky turned dark. Then, relying on the powerful spatial healing ability, it healed. However, not a single trace of the people who had once existed here could be seen. They had completely disappeared from this world. Not even a trace of them was left behind. The 10 billion army besieging Fallen Star Lake was instantly reduced by a quarter. Killing more than 2 billion people in one attack, Lin Jun wasn't satisfied. He fiercely turned around and faced a densely populated area in the sky behind him. The combined dimensional strike was activated again. Waves after waves of killing, waves after waves of death. This time, close to 2 billion people were killed. After 2 moves, 4 billion people were killed. Although the cannons from the left and right of the sky bombarded over, these things didn't even have the qualifications to scratch Lin Jun's itch. The cannons were like a spring breeze. Lin Jun took advantage of the fact that the other side hadn't had time to disperse and teleported to the left side to continue the massacre. 1 billion people were gone. Teleporting to the right side again, 1 billion people were gone again. This kind of battlefield was simply terrifying. Because there was no process to the battle, there was no smoke like other battlefields. A spatial crack would devour a large group of people. Another spatial crack would devour another large group of people. The remaining people were less than 4 billion. Fortunately, they weren't gathered together. These people no longer had any thoughts of fighting Lin Jun. With a boom, they were like wasps that had exploded and began to scatter in all directions. However, Lin Jun had already made arrangements. The four great beasts had already blocked the sky in all directions. They had nowhere to go. The four great beasts had just submitted to their new boss and were worried that they wouldn't have a chance to show off. When they saw these people rushing over, they immediately shook their heads and wagged their tails in excitement and began a massacre. It was too easy for a dominator, rank, vicious beast to deal with these rookies. There was no need for him to use any moves. He could just open his mouth and devour the opponent. There was no chance for him to escape. The golden dragon opened its mouth and spewed out large mouthfuls of dragon flames. Each wave of dragon flames covered a distance of hundreds of kilometers, and each wave killed millions of people. The tiger wasn't any worse. With a roar, the people who came over were all dizzy and disoriented. It opened its mouth and swallowed at least 100,000 people in one gulp. Moreover, its speed was extremely fast as it swallowed them down with a ka-ka-ka-ka sound. A poisonous gas field formed around the python, and anyone who came near it died instantly. Its long tongue swept through the air and filled their stomachs. On the other hand, the barbarian bull side was the most solid. It was a domain of iron walls, and no one could break through it. The bull opened its mouth, and the speed at which it ate people was not inferior at all. In less than 3 minutes, more than 2 billion people were swallowed into their stomachs. Lin Jun didn't stay idle at this time. He began to focus on killing. The first person he wanted to kill was the new king of the Emperor clan. Lin Jun and the Emperor clan had a long history of grudges. He originally thought that the Emperor clan was completely dead, but he didn't expect that they would actually revive. This new king of the Emperor clan, Lin Jun, didn't know his name, nor did he need to know his name. The other party drove a very advanced warship and was currently trying to pass through a gap between the dragons and tigers. In order to cover his passage, he used a lot of cannon fodder, sending them to their deaths from all directions, attracting the attention of the dragons and tigers, leaving a gap. Lin Jun teleported directly to the top of the warship and exerted force with both feet. With a rumble, this warship was directly trampled to the bottom of Fallen Star Lake by Lin Jun. The Emperor clan will completely end from today onwards. The long spear stabbed fiercely. There was no need to look at the person. With one stab, the warship exploded, and the Divine King level experts inside were directly turned into ashes. The fish at the bottom of the lake swam over and swallowed their remains clean. With this Emperor clan Divine King, Lin Jun soared into the sky from the bottom of the lake. His spear just happened to pierce a Divine King who was passing by like an ant on a hot pan. This was a Divine King from the Soul Locking platform, killed in one strike. Teleportation. Next, Freedom City's Divine King. Another teleportation. Next, Twin Trees Garden's Divine King. Lin Jun's consecutive attacks completely killed off the Divine Kings of these 3 Holy Lands, who were also the Holy Lands guards. After killing the Divine Kings, Lin Jun's final target was God's Angel. But Lin Jun looked around and actually did not find any trace of God's Angel. This is really a little strange. Where could this guy have run to? Lin Jun's Divine will swept the entire battlefield, but did not find him. Steam Bun, what's the situation on your side? Master, don't worry. No one can enter here. The sisters-in-law are very safe. Lin Jun nodded. As long as God's Angel did not enter Picking Stars Island, it was fine. Moreover, it was useless for him to enter Picking Stars Island now. Sunflower Scar was enough to kill him. But if he was not here, where could he be? Lin Jun stood in the center of the battlefield, watching the 4 demonic beasts clean up the remaining soldiers. The remaining 1 billion people could be said to have nowhere to go. They were devoured by the 4 demonic beasts and had no chance of escaping. Lin Jun directly posted this video in the Dimensional Universe. He wanted to use this to announce his return and intimidate all those who had bad intentions. He believed that after this incident, no one would dare to have any ideas about this place. In less than 10 minutes, the battle was over. There was not a single enemy left on the battlefield. There was not even a single battleship. They had all been devoured by the demonic beasts. The 4 demonic beasts looked at Lin Jun excitedly. Their tails were even gently swaying as if they wanted to gain their master's approval. Lin Jun had the 4 demonic beasts come over and look at them one by one. After that, he looked at the python. Just now, you kept releasing poisonous fog so that everyone who entered could not see clearly and died of poison, right? The python nodded repeatedly. Its poisonous fog was very powerful. Even divine could not see through it. Anyone below ruler level would definitely die if they entered. Lin Jun laughed. That's right. He walked over to the python's side and said, You used the poisonous fog as a cover and pretended to be dead before entering the python's stomach. Because the python does not know how to chew, you are still alive. That poisonous fog cannot harm a ruler, so you are here, right? There was no sound from within. Lin Jun's expression turned cold. You really won't cry until you see the coffin. Fly into the sky right now and then defecate in the Starfall Lake. The python was stunned. It did not know what Lin Jun meant. Chapter 14:23. The python followed Lin Jun's instructions and flew into the sky. However, its excretion didn't seem to have any effect. Lin Jun simply came to its side and injected dimensional power. With a muffled sound, the angel of God fell from the sky. It was forcefully carried away by the python's excretion. It rolled a few times in the air and then desperately tried to escape into the distance. At this point, how could Lin Jun allow him to escape? He dashed forward, the lotus flower spear in his hand following closely behind. After a few consecutive spears, the angel of God couldn't block Lin Jun's attacks and was stabbed to death on the spot. The god crystal appeared and began to rise into the sky. At this time, Sunflower Scar and the others also came out. The black bumpkin and the four great beasts followed behind Lin Jun and watched the ruler god crystal rise into the sky. Lin Jun took a deep breath and suddenly rose into the air. A powerful dimensional power enveloped the god crystal. Sunflower Scar was shocked behind him. Lin Jun, what are you doing? Are you going against the laws of the universe? The ruler god, Crystal, must return to the eternal mountain. If you forcefully keep it, not only will you not be able to keep it, you will also be bombarded by the heavenly tribulation. It wasn't that no one had done this in history. They forcefully collected the ruler god Crystal in hopes of quickly creating an expert. However, no one had ever succeeded. The will of the universe was inviolable. Lin Jun sneered. Heavenly tribulation. In order to kill me, the origin of the universe even issued a supreme mission, but I'm still alive and well. As for whether I can keep the divinity crystal, we'll have to try. Lin Jun completely ignored Sunflower Scar's advice and forcefully opened his dimensional power. This was completely going against the will of the universe's origin. If it were anyone else, they definitely wouldn't have such courage. However, Lin Jun had experienced too much. After passing the supreme mission, his existence was already recognized and allowed. At this moment, Lin Jun was unscrupulous. It was also at this moment that Lin Jun felt the universe's power in his body begin to awaken. Lin Jun understood why this was the case. It was because he had broken through the knot in his heart and let go of all his worries. He could do whatever he wanted to do, and that was why he had such achievements. Within the chaos Green Lotus, the dimensional energy of a new universe surged out. As long as Lin Jun willed it, a new universe would be born. This powerful force also completely suppressed the ruler's divine crystal, which was trying to escape. Lin Jun closed his hands and caught the divine crystal that was about to escape. Suppressing the urge to create a new universe in his body, Lin Jun took the sovereign god crystal and returned to his family. This was a light attribute divine crystal. In Lin Jun's hand, it emitted a soft and bright light. All of you are my family. I can't always be by your side. After all, I have to cultivate most of the time. I've already chosen this path, and all of you have to walk it with me. Going against the will of the universe's origin isn't a big deal. One of you must fuse with this divine crystal. The wives looked at Lin Jun with excitement, not because of the sovereign god crystal, but because of Lin Jun's words. Since their husband wasn't afraid of the will of the universe's origin, they wouldn't be either. As for who the sovereign god crystal should go to, none of them had any thoughts of fighting over it. They were all calm and quiet women who followed their husband's will. Linjin thought about it. Sunflower Scar didn't need it, and the others could do it. However, it was best to give the light attribute, divine crystal, to Su Mingwei. After all, she cultivated the power of light. I'll give this to you. As for the others, I'll give them to you when I find suitable ones. Su Mingwei nodded and received it. Her face was filled with joy. She was already at the peak of the God King realm, and was likely to break through to the Quasruler realm. When that time came, she could fuse with it. When that time came, she would be a ruler. This was something she had never dared to think about before. Thank you, husband. Lin Zhan smiled and stretched his body. It's finally over. From now on, Fallen Star Lake will be free of worries. With the power of the new universe as his backing, Lin Zhan could easily obtain the sovereign God Crystal. Once all of his wives became rulers, Lin Zhan would no longer have to worry about anything else. At this moment, Lin Ping and Lin walked up to Lin Zhan with some fear. Father, those Lin family descendants. Lin Zhan's face turned cold. These people deliberately spread the news of my death to take revenge for you, not helping them commit crimes in the new territories. These people deserve to die. Although they're descendants of the Lin family, I have no feelings for them. I will announce in the dimensional universe that I will not give these descendants any protection. Let them fend for themselves. Lin Ping nodded. Father is right, but not all of them are evil people. There are some who are not bad. You can decide on the specifics. Those with good character and aptitude can come here to cultivate, but this kind of thing must never happen again. All evildoers must pay the price for their actions. Lin Ping and Lin nodded and left happily. With Lin Zhan's return, everyone was relieved. Everyone was happy from the bottom of their hearts. Although the Fallen Star Lake had experienced this calamity and had lost a lot of people, every single person who remained was an elite among elites. 1,000 years of fierce battle had tested their loyalty and honed their abilities. Fallen Star Lake still had more than 100 disciples, and each of them was a god. Some of them were about to break through to the Divine King realm. This was very rare in the primordial realm. Mei Erlin's lover was also a disciple of Fallen Star Lake's Heaven class. His name was Chun Shi. He was a handsome young man with outstanding potential. This time, he was also the leader of the disciples. He was a peak quasi-divine king. Lin Zhan did not interfere with his daughter's relationship. He only hoped that this Chun Shi could continue to work hard and be a true match for Mei Erlin. After the battle at Picking Stars Island, the entire primordial realm quieted down. Many people were worried that Lin Zhan might take advantage of the aftermath of his victory to do something like subjugation. In fact, if Lin Zhan wanted to conquer now, no one would be able to stop him. However, Lin Zhan did not want to do so. Conquering was meaningless to him. What he needed was the ultimate strength of his own martial strength. That was true freedom. After staying with his family for a year, Lin Zhan also enjoyed a year of familial happiness. His father did not come out when Lin Zhan was fighting with Li Qin. Now, he could come out and pass his days peacefully. He also expressed to Lin Zhan that he would no longer pursue family prosperity. Now that they had so many daughters-in-law by their side, they were already very content. A year later, Lin Zhan presided over Mei Erlin's wedding. His daughter was officially married. After that, Lin Zhan requested his family not to delay their cultivation. He wanted everyone to reach the quasi-divine king realm as soon as possible. As long as they became quasi-divine kings, Lin Zhan would be responsible for finding divine king crystals for them. This period of time would not end in a short period of time. His wives also knew that there was no time to lose. They all began to cultivate intensely. As for Lin Zhan, he also chose to go into seclusion at this time. He was about to awaken the power of the universe. Once he succeeded, Lin Zhan's strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds.